Coffee Monday is more than a podcast. It's a movement to reshape the way we approach Mondays and the week ahead. It's about embracing the reality that work doesn't have to dominate our lives. It's about finding that sweet spot where passion, purpose, and a cup of motivation connect. Filmed and recorded in California's Central Valley, join me, your host, Ray Pardini Matson, as I invite thriving professionals to share their stories of how they're crafting a life that's both vibrant and balanced. Two-time Major League All-Star CJ Wilson isn't just a star athlete. He's a family man with a beautiful wife and 4 blessed children, and he's a car guy and a Bitcoiner and a podcaster and a photographer. This car guy grew up actually racing on the dirt track, which is super cool, and now has his own suite of luxury car dealerships. With big plans ahead, I'm super stoked to welcome CJ to the show and look forward to sharing his story and the tremendous value he brings to the Central Valley. CJ Wilson here, so excited to have you.
Thanks, Ray.
I'm so excited. This is so fun.
I'm very familiar in the podcast format, so it's good. It's good.
I know. You need to teach me something.
I'm actually really excited. I was looking through Instagram, and like a clip of you pulled up interviewing somebody, and I was like, "Yo, Ray, what's up? Podcast homies, let's go."
I know. You inspired me. And
I don't know about that.
So you've had more than one though. Throttle Dogs, I know for sure.
Yeah, that's the car podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had a Bitcoin podcast for a while, and I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts over the years. Mm-hmm. I've done podcasts from carnivore diet, like there's a podcast called The Meat Mafia, and I've done baseball stuff and like all kinds of things.
Car stuff.
Yeah, lots of car stuff. But podcasting is a cool format because it's like a decentralized expression, and you can have a real interview. Mm-hmm. As a former interview subject with baseball, it was people would interview you after a game and they're like, "So you gave up a home run, you really sucked tonight." You're like, "Oh, cool, thanks." And they're like, "What were you trying to do?" I was like, "Throw a slider in the dirt." And they're like, "But you threw it down the middle." I'm like, "Yep." Like, why? It slipped. I'm sorry, and then you have these soundbite interviews, and you don't ever really get to know anybody unless they're quippy. And if they're quippy, generally they're kind of a jerk. So then you try to be quippy, and then you come off as a jerk, and you're like, maybe I'm doing this all wrong. And then podcasting kind of like the big bang of podcasting a couple years ago. And then I started listening to a lot of podcasts, especially during COVID. I think that was when podcasting really took off.
So what are some of your favorites that you listen to?
I listen to a lot of podcasts on science, actually, and on Bitcoin. Monetary policy sounds like super amazing. I feel like investing podcasts are kind of interesting because you can learn stuff. There's people that are so specialized in different niches. Yeah. And you can it's like, this guy has been doing this for 10 years. Maybe he's got something there. And they have some weird little hack, like, get a Montana LLC for your car, or a South Dakota residency for tax purposes, or something weird like that. And you're like, literally never considered that. So, okay, just another thing. But yeah, I'm just interested in, whatever, all the stuff out there.
I feel like your brain is always going, never stops. You're always got something going on there. So you mentioned Bitcoin. You're very involved with the Bitcoin community. Tell me about that.
Well, okay, so I have to go way back, right?
Yeah,
like way back.
Let's go.
So
how back?
I'll try to do this in chronological order. So first of all, let me establish that the money is broken. Our dollar is a complete sham of a currency at this point. And that started when they formed the Federal Reserve. There's a book about that called The Creature of Jekyll Island. And it explains how a couple really large banks got together to conspire to make the Federal Reserve. This is a very scary topic when you delve into it. So I'm just warning everybody, if they want to take the blue pill and pretend everything's okay, like the Matrix, go back in. Everything's fine. Do not read this book. Yeah. But if you've studied the economy at all, or if you're an investor, it's good to understand where money comes from, what money is. And in that regard, in 1971, when the American dollar, U.S. dollar, came off the gold standard, Nixon depegged so you used to be able to just take dollars, and you could go to a bank or really go to a government institution and say, "I want my gold."
Yeah.
And if you had $300, they'd give you $300 worth of spot value gold right there at that point. And then in 1971, they decided to change that. And since then, there's been a massive increase in monetary supply and a massive increase in productivity, but not a massive increase in wages. It used to be back in the 60s that if you had any kind of regular job, you could afford a house, and it would just be a smaller house or something like that if you had like a regular job, like you worked at a grocery store or whatever. Now you can't afford a house unless you have a really high paying job. And this is an example, but there's a website called WTF Happened in 1971, and it's amazing. So if anybody wants to like really get up to speed, that's it. So knowing all this stuff and getting involved in maybe like investing at a young age, because my grandfather was a calculus professor, so he taught me how to day trade when I was 12.
I feel like you're very math-minded.
Yes. Yeah. Well, math is very simple in this regard. This is why I see everything in math. Do I want this or this? That means this is worth more. This is 1. This is 0. That's everything. Yeah. Everything I see in a binary sense that I want this outcome, not this outcome, I'm going to go that way. And if you keep going that way, you start to see patterns in things, and you start to see that certain things have more value than other things. And it's like, you have to make a choice. If you have $1 to spend, where are you going to spend it on, So anyways, 2007, I'm actively investing. So I've been investing for a long time. I'm in
Bitcoin.
Real estate. I'm in real estate at this point.
Just invest. Okay.
And I get really gun shy because, I was like, I mean, if you've seen The Big Short, you'll understand this, but I had a condo in California. I had a condo in Dallas. I was living in Dallas in my condo. I got offered a condo in Austin at the W Hotel. They were like doing this condo project or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's only $30,000. I'll put a deposit on that. I'll probably be able to flip it by the time they do the second or third phase or something like that if I get in early. Yeah. And then I was like, wait a second, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? I have no control over this. And then what happened was there was a situation where I found out that I was actually paying more in the early phase of the project than people were paying in the later phase. So usually it's the opposite way around. If you get a new development, the people that are in first benefit from what's called the Cantillon effect, which is they're closer to they're trading on insider information basically. So I pulled my deposit out, and then I pulled all my money out of the stock market completely. And I was like, I don't like what's happening, because I'd already been investing for a long time at that point. I was in the majors. I was making pretty decent money at that point, and I was living in Texas. And okay, so just to picture this, right? I'm from Southern California. Yeah. Everybody love everybody, right? That whole vibe. Orange County, surfer dude, like everything's cool. Yeah. And then I'm living in Texas, and people are like, "Oh man, we're gonna have a Democrat in the office, and it's gonna ruin everything." And I was like, "Well, what's gonna happen?" And they're like, "Oh man, everything's gonna go to crap." And I was like, maybe these people are right. So I literally started buying
these people.
I mean, they weren't my people yet. I'd only been living there for a year and a half, but they was very influential. So I started buying gold, silver, guns, loose stones like diamonds and rubies. And I was like, okay, in case the United States government collapses for some reason, I have a bag full of stuff. I can leave. And if I have to go to Switzerland or Aruba or whatever, I can make it. Yeah. At that point, I could fit my entire life in a bag. I didn't have a lot of stuff. I just, I didn't have a lot of possessions. I was 26. I didn't have stuff. I didn't have kids. I didn't have anything like that. I just had my future to worry about. And, on the baseball team, you have players from Japan, Venezuela, Dominican, Mexico, like Puerto Rico, all over the place. Alabama. Woo. So it's like, okay, well, I could just get a passport. If I lived somewhere else, I could just fly in and play for the season and fly back home. If I had to leave America because it just fell apart, like the purge. You
were thinking ahead.
Yeah, I was really worried. I was kind of I'm like a doomsday prepper, right?
Are you?
Yeah, well, in this regard, financially, yeah. Okay. So,
okay, I could see that financially.
So then I became like a hardcore gold bug and started researching all this stuff. The economy tanks. This is when gold was like $750, $850 an ounce. Gold now is like $2,000 an ounce, roughly. So I had piled all my money into portable money, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in Texas. I can have a gun and gold, and like I'm good to go." Like that was literally the mindset. It was that simple.
Basics.
It was that simple. So the world didn't totally collapse, but the economy did. The Federal Reserve lent the government $880 billion and printed all this money. The housing market completely tanked. In some places never recovered. And I dodged that bullet because I was scared.
Yeah.
So in a way, like my fear opened me up to that. So then a couple years later, I heard about Bitcoin, And I was like, oh, like computer money for nerds, like. And then it was like, there's this thing called the Silk Road where people were using Bitcoin to pay for illicit services. I want drugs delivered to my house, like I'll pay you in Bitcoin, or there's like weird stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, sketchy. And I'm like running a children's charity and stuff. I'm like, I can't get involved in like drug dealer money. That's crazy. So I didn't really get it until probably 2017, 2018. That's when I started really looking into it. And Bitcoin went from like $1,000 to $20,000. And I was like, this is accelerating too high. It's going to crash. This is a bubble, yada, yada. Because I'd been investing for a long time, and I was like, this is not a good pattern. Like, things don't 20x like this
That
in
fast.
this period of time. Yeah. And then it crashed down to like 4,000 or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, why didn't it go further? If it was a scam, if it was a Ponzi, like, it would have collapsed. So then I read the Bitcoin white paper, which is like an 8-page document that Satoshi Nakamoto wrote on Halloween of 2008. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's a limited supply. Oh, okay. Then I got it. Then I understood the whole thing. Everything clicked into place at that point. And then I kind of was, all in on Bitcoin.
All in.
To a degree. I mean, it's like, obviously you have to look at all investments as a hedge, but it's a very simple question. Do you trust Janet Yellen with your entire life's work and your entire life savings?
Fair.
If the answer is no, then you should probably look into Bitcoin
Truth.
and other alternative assets.
And so you've been involved in, kind of educating yourself on Bitcoin for a lot longer than I thought. You said probably what?
6 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And has it been around for about that?
No, Bitcoin's been around since 2009.
Okay.
So it's been around for like almost 15 years now.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So fast forward to today,
Sure.
you've been asked to present on the topic, educate others on the topic, go on podcasts about the topic, right? All the things.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had like a Bitcoin podcast called The Bitcoin Bottom Line, where we discuss all these different things in the sense like it's very early in Bitcoin still. There's very few people that actually use it relative to the world population. But,
Do you think that's, pause on that, sorry. Do you think that's because of lack of education?
Yes.
Because I sometimes feel that way. You've taught me a lot about it. I've done a little bit of my own research, but I still feel like I could definitely educate myself more about it. So so maybe there's like an intimidation factor or just an approachability that isn't there for some people.
Yeah, it takes someone that has the ability to slim down the technical aspects of it. And it's just like farming or anything else. Like, until you really see there's a tangible aspect of this, because if you tell somebody that's a normal investor, oh, hey, if you buy this plot of land and you plant trees, in 7 years, you'll be able to start making money.
Right.
And people don't see the value in that, right? Until they understand that it's formulaic and that you can use that as a kind of more of a steady portfolio asset, and then you look at it that way. So with Bitcoin, I try to tell people to think from counting from the bottom up, not from the top down. So when people say, oh, one Bitcoin is XYZ dollars, that's kind of irrelevant. It's more like, how many Satoshis do you have? Now, a Satoshi is the smallest unit of a Bitcoin, like a penny, except it's 100 millionth. So if you have 100 million Satoshis, you have one Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin goes up in value, like it has been over the last 15 years, and it keeps kind of marching, it's going to be volatile as people discover what it is.
Right.
But if the total Satoshi count is 2.1 quadrillion, the total value of every asset on the planet today, and all the money ever created, all the real estate, all the Rolexes and Porsches and diamonds and stocks and art and everything is like $600 trillion. So 2.1 quadrillion is like 3.5 times 600 trillion. So theoretically, you could get to the point, if there was ever anywhere near sat, like one sat and $1 parity, then that means that a Bitcoin would be worth $100 million or more. And so that's or anywhere near that, and so then if you have 10,000 sats in the future, you could have more value than you have now. So the idea is, wherever you buy the Bitcoin today, if you can think of 5-10 years from now, you're buying really early. Like, I thought I was buying in late when I was buying in at $4,000, $5,000.
And now, relatively, I feel like you were on the earlier side.
Yeah, relatively speaking, exactly. Yeah. But there's people that were buying it at $300 that sold at $1,000, and they're like, well, I 3x my money, I'm good.
Yeah.
But it's not just an investment like an Apple stock, And I don't tell people not to buy Apple stock, but what I say is, understand that you have these different buckets, and Bitcoin is the only thing that Jerome Powell or Joe Biden or Donald Trump or, Klaus Schwab from the WEF, who's like the evil dictator of the world, or Justin Trudeau. But Bitcoin is the only thing that they can't take away from you. They could come to your house with guns and take your gold.
Yeah.
They could find it. They could crack your safe open. They could take it. Some people might get shot depending on what part of Texas or Louisiana you're in, but you can't repo it. So in that regard, it's really yours once you take possession of it, and not like buying it on Coinbase and leaving it there. But there's a method of taking possession of it where you have digital control over it, and you could hand that down after year after year after year, and you can even set up like a 401k or an IRA with it in there. So it's really complex, but like anything complex, it just really requires time. You have to put the time in. And people don't see the benefit in America because they're like, oh, I have a job, I have cash, da 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 da. But if like the banks blow up, like if you were a Silicon Valley bank,
cars paid for by Bitcoin.
100%, yeah.
Have you sold any?
Oh yeah. I probably sell a car every 1 or 2 months for Bitcoin.
No way.
Yeah. So the store holds
awesome.
Bitcoin and pays the employees in Bitcoin and all that stuff.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah. So we have like 80 or 90 people that are Bitcoiners at the store out of the 100 people.
Are they
that we
because you've?
Well, we give it to them as part of a benefit. It's called the
How
Bitcoin
cool
benefit
is
plan.
that?
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's just time. It's like it's
progressive.
Yeah, but I mean. And like I said, you count from the bottom up. So you have this much today, you get another $20, $30, and you add it like that, like a savings account, and that's a much better way to look at it. But it's sovereign money that no one else can take away. That's the key. So the book I recommend everybody read to understand where we're going is called The Sovereign Individual.
Okay.
It was written in like 1996 or 1998, and it's about the information age that we're a part of now and how the information age changes things. Like this guy's writing in the 90s, and he says, one day, your computer connection will be so good you'll be able to work from the beach. So you will move to a jurisdiction that recruits you as a worker, as a citizen. Why would you ever live somewhere if you can work remotely? And live. Why would you live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and deal with the winters they have if you're a forklift driver and you could log in, put your goggles on, and operate the forklift from your secure internet connection with your thumbprint ID from Barbados?
Wow.
Why would you do that? Right. So that's where we're going with some of these like certain types of jobs that you can like augment. And I do think that is the future of work in the same sense that a lot of us work from home here and there. You have more information, so you can make digital transactions happen faster. And the only way to pay the call center people in Delhi or the virtual forklift driver in Barbados is Bitcoin, because why would he want your trash dollars or trash rupees or whatever from your country that they can just do this on? And as these currencies like the Argentinian peso, the Lebanese lira, I think it is a pound, Turkish lira, they've completely imploded in the last like 12 months. And we're sitting here going like, dude, hyperinflation's real. It doesn't just happen in Africa. It's happening in these other places. So anyways, if you're suspicious about money, it'd be good to dig in on Bitcoin.
Yeah, good to know.
Say all that
so
stuff.
You've referenced a few books, like in just the short amount of time we've been talking. Do you read a lot?
I don't read as much as I should. That sounds weird, but once I read a book, I've retained it.
Yeah.
So I have a really good memory. When I injured myself, this is like, so skipping ahead to the baseball time, the reason why I read so much is because even when I was a little kid, I understood that there's knowledge that people have put into the universe, right? And before the internet, there was only books. That was it.
Right.
You had books and VHS tapes. That was effectively it. So once YouTube came out and people were putting, or in like Instagram or whatever, I can learn how to cook like a dish that I've never even tried before just by watching
a video.
YouTube videos now. So I could learn how to play a song on the piano from watching a video. And if I just stick with it and I have this in front of me, I can play it. So why would I turn that down? Someone's put this effort out there and they've written a message for the future. That's what a book is, effectively. So when you read these things, especially ones like that are important to you or your cause or whatever it is, or you think about protecting your family with these different skills that you want to develop, not just knowledge like reading to read. Reading to read is great. But if you look at it as to say, there's a homework assignment and I must learn one new skill a year. I must do one difficult thing. I must learn how to do this aspect of myself and get this one thing better. I mean, by the time you're 40 or 50 years old, like how many books have you theoretically read and how much stuff do you know and why are you that much more worldly? Because not everybody can afford to go to the Acropolis in Greece and see it.
True.
But you can read about it and read about, you know, all these different things. And like, you can read about the history of Italy or the history of Greece or Turkey or, you know, whatever. And you could read that because someone has written about it, and they might have written about it 50 years ago or 1,000 years ago.
Right.
But it's all valuable information to give you perspective on how we got here.
Right. So let's rewind a bit, because you mentioned as a child. I want to know more. I mean, we're friends. We've known each other for a while.
Yep.
Just trying to think about the first time we actually were introduced or met.
I believe we met at a charity event in 2017 or 18.
Okay.
Either it was either the March of Dimes or Make a Wish or something like that.
Make-A-Wish,
I feel like
probably,
or
yeah.
Marjorie Mason.
You used
is
to
one
be
of those
involved.
things.
Are you still involved with March of Dimes?
I've done a lot of stuff with like those things. I personally donate now. It's just
Yeah.
been tough, like, because we get stretched in every direction.
I'm
You know,
sure.
like, I don't really know what to do, and I've tried to spread around and rotate to different charities and stuff. But it's really difficult with the kids and stuff for me to actually make appearances places sometimes,
Sure,
because they're always
right?
at night, and it's like, if we don't have a babysitter, now we have 4 kids. It's just like, I'm just building the kid farm as an excuse. It's like a moat.
No,
I don't have to
but
do
it's a
anything. I
real
got 4
deal.
kids, man. You
have
can't make me
4
go to this thing.
kids. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
you got 3. It's the same thing.
I know.
It's chaos.
But so fun.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in a big family. I feel like your house is the place to be. You know, with having a big family, it's just fun. There's a lot of action. Your kids will have friends over all the time as they get older. So 2 daughters, 2 sons.
Yep.
Valentina is
7.5.
Okay, 7.
Katerina's almost 6.
Yep.
Max is 2.5,
Yep.
and Dominic he'll be 7 months old.
Love that you guys went for that 4th, because our kids are the same ages, other than Dom throws added to the mix. Which is sweet.
We were at your house for a barbecue, right?
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't know, man, 3, we're done. And Liz and I were like, should we tell her? Should we not tell her? Because we already knew at that point. You know,
no,
it was kind of
love
funny.
it. It's so great, you guys. It's the best. It's the best. And the boys have each other. Girls have each other, and I'm sure.
Although
they all
Max
are,
is like side eye on Dominic right
Yeah.
now. He's like, he's crawling. I don't know.
He's
I don't like this progress.
Yeah, I bet you Dom will go straight to walking. I was talking to Liz about that the other day, because he's very active, and she was saying he's trying to crawl on his feet, get on his feet.
Yeah, he does like a pike position, like
Yeah.
a downward dog. And Liz is such a wizard at like the child rearing thing now. She's like got him to crawl so quickly, because she figured out that it's a parenting tip. You can splice this. Parenting tips. If you put your hands very lightly on the calves, like on their ankles or their calves or whatever, they can't lift up and do the stink bug. They have to drag their legs.
Bug.
So then they actually figure out the circular kind of locomotion, like alligator crawl, that they need to do. And so he went from like attempting it, and she's like, oh, what if we do this? And then like now he's just crawling around. So he's like all over the place now. But he tried to stand up on me today. I was playing with him this morning, and he put his hands on my chest and like stood up, and he was like all wobbly. And I was like,
oh God.
What is this
Here
kid
we go.
doing?
Here we
You know?
go.
Yeah.
He's trying to keep up with his siblings.
For sure. And it's way easier, as you know, when you have other people to share that learning experience with.
It's sweet.
And, you know, I think everything, you benefit from that. I had one brother growing up. And
I can't. Okay, so you're older or younger?
I'm the older brother.
You're the older. Okay.
Yeah.
How much younger is he?
18 months. Like
So
almost
you're close
exactly.
in age. Okay.
Yeah. He's an artist. He lives in LA. He has one son named Chase. It was really funny because him and his wife, they didn't want to tell us what they were naming their son.
Yeah.
They like kept it a secret. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, I'm not going to like steal your name. You know, I'm not going to like we've thought about it. Liz and I have thought about it. And we have a completely different set of influences, you know, because Liz is Brazilian. And so we have to like name the kids stuff that can actually be pronounced in Portuguese.
Yeah.
So no R's.
You've done a great job.
No R's in the names. We can't do that for the, you know, like Katerina kind of makes sense because they can say.
But even the way Liz says it, I can't even duplicate it. It's
right.
so like
it's very
sexy.
yeah. There you go.
Cool.
Like yeah,
It's
you
like,
know.
I can't.
Yeah, so it's cool. But you know, so Maximus, that literally is like Max sounds like a race car driver name, and it sounds like
Which
kind
is
of a
so great.
tough guy.
But Maximus is such a solid name.
What's Liz's favorite movie?
Matrix.
Gladiator.
Gladiator. Oh, really?
Maximus.
Yeah. Wait,
Russell Crowe.
Her
Yes.
favorite movie
yes.
is Gladiator.
Yes, that's why his name is
Stop.
Maximus.
I'm dying.
Yeah, and what's one of my favorite movies?
Yeah.
The Matrix.
Okay, that's
so
what
that's
I
why
thought.
that's
I
why
thought
his
you-
middle name is Neo.
Yeah.
'Cause
Neo.
he's the
I
one.
knew there was a Matrix influence in
Yes.
there. That's why I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
his middle name is Neo.
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh
so
my God, so cool.
we wanted to have you know, strong consonants as the start, you know, and her name is La Sala, right? So it has to, so the girls had to have pretty names. So we were like
Gorgeous.
we had like a I don't know, like a fantasy football draft board, and we had like 100 names. We're like,
Don't
nope,
you
nope,
feel like
nope.
that's half the battle?
Yes.
As a couple, is agreeing on the name.
100%.
I felt that way.
It was so fun.
It was fun. I vividly remember we were driving down to LA, Michael and I, pregnant with our first. And I was like, okay, we're driving. He can't go anywhere. He can't change the subject.
I've
he
got
can't
him.
get distracted. I've got
Handcuffed.
him
He's handcuffed to the wheel.
captured.
Yeah.
And we were literally going on the grapevine, and I remember, I'm like, okay, so let's talk names. And we did. And that's how we chose Gwen's name. And that was the first name on my list. I had a list. Yes, crazy like that.
That's nothing wrong with that.
And he agreed. And I just remember, like, and some of the ones he suggested, I was like, no.
Right.
And probably same here, you know? But I vividly remember agreeing on that drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking as 2 and 3 came along, I'm like, oh, man. It was hard enough to agree on one. How are we going to agree on multiple?
We literally had... We did like an NCAA tournament, and it was like 100 names.
All the names.
Eliminate to 60 names.
Yeah.
And like she gives me a sheet, and I got to cross out like 20 of them. I give her a sheet. She gets to cross out 20 of them. And this was like before we knew if it was a boy or a girl. So we had like a final, like an Elite 8 on like boy and girl names.
Oh my God, amazing.
And it was funny because there was this one name that she kept trying to throw in the mix. And I'm like, that's not happening. It sounds like a pasta.
Can't blame her for trying though.
No. It's great. And so, her and I are very similar in the sense that we feel like there's a responsibility for the parent to make sure that their kid gets off to a good start.
Love
and,
that.
So the name is a part of that, and how you project what that name means and why you're naming your child that is kind of cool. But there's influences for sure.
Yeah.
And there's people that, whether it's fictional movie characters or real life, heroes or something like that, or villains that you're like, we cannot name our kid that.
Sure.
Because that girl was the hoe,
sure.
and we're not calling her that. You know what I mean?
Michael literally said something similar. He's like, I never realized how many people I hated until I had to name my child.
Exactly.
So bad.
Yeah, because it's like, no, that kid picked on me in school. Like, screw that kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't.
So Valentina, Katerina, Maximus, and Dominic.
Yep.
Does he go by Max? I've always called him Max. Does he go by Maximus or Max or both?
Well, it's the classic thing when you're happy with, hey, Max. And
yeah.
It's like, Maximus, get over here. You know what I mean?
So cute.
He knows his name as both, and so he understands, like, he's got, the first name and the short name or whatever. The girls go by their initials, so they just go by K and V. And that's it. Although
with their friends too, like I knew at home, but
yeah,
cute.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, can V come over to play? So I think intentionality is the secret to everything. I think you can live with every decision you make on purpose is a good way to say it. And so in the same sense of like, you get married on purpose, you buy a house on purpose, you buy a car on purpose, name your kids on purpose, then, you teach on purpose, you parent on purpose and all that stuff. It's draining in a way. So it is a lot of work for all of us. And it's tough, but we couldn't do it without being a team. You guys
are a great team, great parents. Your children are amazing. You're doing great.
We have our moments, and we have these discussions where we're like, okay, we need to figure this out because we'll have a plan or a question, and we'll be kind of not debating, but there'll be a gray area, and her and I will like circle the problem together and say, okay, what about this? What about that? And we really talk through everything.
That's so great.
That's because when we first started dating, right, I wasn't sure how well she spoke English and what her mastery was. Yeah. I knew she was smart because she was able to speak around it, but Liz had a very thick accent when we first started. Very, very sexy and cute, like different.
I love that.
But
so how'd you meet? I want to know.
We met through a friend of mine. He actually interviewed her. And was like, hey, you need to meet this chick. And sends me a photo of her. And I'm like, well, she's really attractive. But what am I supposed to do with this information that there's a really attractive person? Like, she lives in New York. I live in LA. Like, what am I supposed to do with this info?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, you'll figure it out. You'll find a way. And then he like linked us on Twitter, like copied me as a reply in her interview that he posted or something like that. And I was like, oh, Jimmy, some of your best work, so it's really funny. But yeah, he's responsible for all of this. It's kind of his.
And then how'd you end up actually meeting if you were on opposite coasts?
Yeah, she was out in LA for work at some point, and she posted a photo there's like, so Liz was a model for a long time, and she was shooting for, I think it was like Maybelline at the time, for some sort of like, I don't know, beauty campaign for like eyeliner or something like that.
Yeah.
And she posted a photo of like this really iconic Los Angeles house. And as a architectural fan personally, and as a photographer, I knew that house. I knew where that house was. I lived a mile away from there. And I was like, that was the first time I ever DM'd her. I had never DM'd her, and we had been, like following each other since like maybe November or something like that. And this was now like January 31st or whatever. So this is like 2 or 3 months later. And I was like, hey, are you in Los Angeles like right now? And she goes, yeah, I'm working at this house. Do you know where it is? I said, I live a mile away from there. I'm renting a place in Beverly Hills. And this was in between playing for the Rangers and the Angels that off season.
Okay.
And I was so nervous. So I was like, I felt like Joey from Friends, I was like, I gotta be cool. Yeah. So I got on my motorcycle. I rode my motorcycle over there because she had posted something about my goal for 2012 is to get my motorcycle license. And I was like, I'll help you with that.
That's your girl.
Yeah.
Yep.
And because Liz has that same kind of mindset of always improving herself and looking at these different skills. So one of her best friends, she met like in kickboxing class when she was living in New York, because she was there to like work on her fitness or, work on her, I don't know. I mean, I guess I at one point I was like, are you a spy? You're like good at everything. This is kind of scary. Because we met a couple years after Mr. and Mrs. Smith came out. So I was like, are we going to like shoot guns and do karate in the kitchen? Like what's going on here? But so there's always been a little bit of that, and that's been fun. But she's very adventurous, and so anyway, she was in LA. She agreed to meet. I rode to this house where it was, and I waited there for like 40 minutes, and I was like, am I getting catfished right now?
Yeah.
Is she a bot? Like what's going on?
What is happening? Yeah.
So then as I start to leave, she like comes out, and she's like, hey, I'm on break. Sorry. Like da-da-da. So we talked. I was like, hey, let's go to dinner. She's like, I'm sorry, I don't date strangers. I was like, I'm just going to go right off a cliff. See ya. Bye. And I just, so then I sent her flowers because she didn't say where she was staying, good move, by the way, but I kind of deduced where she was staying. Obviously, I didn't know what room or anything. So I just sent it to the front desk, copy her name. So they delivered it to her room.
Great.
So I sent her flowers, and she was like, oh man, that's like really nice. You actually seem like a gentleman, not some like weird, creepy guy. Yeah. So maybe we can go on a date, So we went on a date, we talked, and she was like, listen, here's the deal. Like, I'm from a big family. I want a big family. Like, I don't want to mess around with stuff. Like, if you're just trying to get like a Brazilian notch on your belt, a stamp in your passport, I'm not into that. So she like laid down the law like right out of the gate.
Amazing.
With a thick accent and with, and I was like, wow, she's actually really sharp, but she knows exactly what she wants. And that's what was really attractive to me was that she knew what she wanted. And I don't know, I had been dating other people and stuff, so I'd been through some ups and downs in relationships, and so I recognized right away that this was somebody that I could really like. I could like count on this person because she's so firm in her beliefs that I was like, okay, this person's predictable. And as a baseball player, it's difficult because you're traveling a lot, so you need to know the other person is like, you need to know what the other person is really like up
faithful.
To. Yeah, well, and
trust
but yeah, the trust is built up on their set of values, I guess. So we had very parallel values. We wanted the same thing. So
amazing.
I was like, I like motorcycles, but I want to have a bunch of kids. And she's like, I like motorcycles too, and I like racing. So she's like, what's baseball? She had no idea.
She had no idea.
And that was great because then I realized this girl she's not like a cleat chaser. Yeah, exactly. And it really
love that.
Yeah,
just so innocent.
And like living in Texas was funny because when you live in Dallas, if you play for the Mavericks or the Stars or the Cowboys or the Rangers, there's like not a lot of other things going on. It's not like LA. Yeah. There's always real celebrities in Los Angeles. There's Leo.
Entertainment.
There's Justin Bieber
aspect.
or whatever.
Good point.
So as an athlete, unless you're playing for the Lakers, which is really the biggest big show, you're never really on the top. You're not in tier 1 in the dating pool. Like you don't have people approaching you in that regard because they're chasing the celebrities. The cleat chaser girls are actually chasing all the celebrities instead.
Would you call it a cleat chaser?
Cleat chaser.
That's a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Wow.
It's a real thing.
Wow.
So, but in Dallas they are.
Yeah.
Right.
I bet. That's
so
a
it's different.
really
So you have
point.
to filter them. And I had a teammate, bless his heart, he said this to me. He's like, God, there's so many gold diggers and chasing us down and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, it's a problem. Like because you have to be careful to make sure that they like you for you. I said, it's not that they want to date you, because that's like a mutually agreeable term.
Right.
It's that they divorce you and they take half your money after the fact.
Yeah.
That's the one thing you want to avoid. And he goes, yeah, you're right. So anyways, I want to get a Lamborghini. And I was like, what? Like, yeah.
So how do we transition that? Right?
Yeah. And so that's what
funny.
you deal with a lot of baseball players, where they understand one aspect of the problem, but then they're creating the problem themselves.
Truth.
You know, and
Truth.
that was the thing.
What's that about? I guess he just didn't care.
He's a special guy.
Do you still keep in touch with any of your teammates?
A couple of them.
Yeah.
Instagram makes it easy.
I bet.
You know, text makes it easy. We have group text with some guys, but I don't do fantasy football or anything. So if I did, then
they do.
A lot of them do. They love it.
Funny.
Yeah, because I like the sports that I like. I like baseball and I like racing. I don't really. I mean, I like hockey a little bit, but I don't really follow the football at all. And as a result of that. That's like the number one pastime for most baseball players in the off season, because the football season coincides directly with our off season.
Yeah.
So that's their thing, is they like watching football and hanging out with their friends, and I
sense.
just Sundays are for racing in my house. That's what I want to be doing.
Love that.
You know?
So I feel like there's so much to talk about, CJ. I don't even know where to begin.
Well,
let's go back to, like, you're not originally from Fresno. You said SoCal.
Yeah.
Huntington Beach area, right?
From Huntington Beach.
Okay.
Grew up there, and then
So how'd you get into baseball? Did you play like as a child?
Yeah, but I didn't play t-ball or coach pitch. I didn't play until it was kid pitch, and so I liked sports a lot. This is actually. I mean, this is kind of funny, and it's great that we're on video for this part, because this is like a thing. So I used to play basketball. I was really into basketball. Basketball and racing were my two things. And I was born in 1980. So when I was 6 years old, right, my influences were Magnum PI, Top Gun,
obviously,
and the Lakers.
Yeah.
Because the Lakers were three-peating, right? 87, 88, 89. They're in the finals, right? Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It's like, this is the peak of basketball in Southern California.
Yeah.
And all due respect to Shaq and Kobe and all this other stuff, I was a child, and this was, that was the period of time.
Sure. Yeah.
The Dodgers were in the World Series in '88, so I understood baseball to a degree.
Yeah.
I didn't play baseball until 1989. So the reason
so like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
Right?
So I liked cars. At 2.
You did.
I was into cars. Road and Track magazine, Motor Trend, all that stuff. I'd go to the doctor's office and like flip through the magazines and stuff.
Love it.
And I was into that. And so I asked the doctor, I said, "Hey, you're a doctor. You have money. What kind of car do you have?" And he goes, "Oh, I drive a Honda." And I was like, "Are you a loser? Like, what a loser doctor is. This is me at 2. I'm like, "Why don't you have a Mercedes?" Yeah,
whatever,
like you should have a Mercedes. You're rich, right? That's why. So I always thought the car was the toy of the wealthy guy. And the 80s were like the consumption decade. It was all about red and, success and suit and tie. And like, it was this thing that, it was the people on TV. It was Magnum PI and Miami Vice and Tom Cruise and Top Gun. So it was like fighter pilots and race car drivers and like macho manly men. Yeah. I was like, well, I want to be like that. I want to be like James Bond driving Aston Martin. I want to be like Magnum PI driving a Ferrari.
Right.
So I loved cars, and I built cars. And my dad was in the Air Force before I was born, and so he'd take us to air shows. So I liked airplanes.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was building fighter planes and all that stuff. Anyways, so I liked cars, and I wanted a Ferrari Testarossa. And I'm, of course, like 8 years old. And my dad's like, "Well, you could, they're $120,000. So, you're going to have to pay for it. They don't just fall out of the sky."
Right.
And I'm like, "Well, okay, so what kind of job do I need to have?" And he's
At
like, "Well,
8, you're wondering this.
This is me. This is the definition of how I was." And, at that point, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I wanted to fly in the Air Force. I want to fly F-16s. I want to shoot bad guys. I wanted to protect America. Literally,
Top Gun,
this is my thing.
Dad,
I had a flat top. I wore a green bomber jacket to school and jeans and like mirrored aviators. Like, I have a picture of me on a motorcycle.
I need photo evidence of this.
It's literally like I wanted to be Maverick. Like, that was the thing,
amazing.
Yeah. But in the back of my head, I was always like, well, Goose dies. Spoiler. Original Top Gun, Goose dies. So my dad goes, "Oh, well, you could be a lawyer." I'm like, "What do they do?" And he's like, "Oh, they argue for like their argue." You could be a doctor. I'm like, "Okay, well, like I know my doctor, but he drives a Honda, so obviously I can't be that kind of doctor." He's like, "Well, you could be like a surgeon, and then you like cut people open and fix them." I'm like, "Oh, blood and guts, like that? No thanks." He's like, "Or you could be, this or that, like a psychologist, like your uncle, because my uncle in San Diego is like a psychiatrist or whatever." I wrote a book about relationships called The Passion Paradox in like the 80s, and I was like, "I don't want to listen to people's problems." And he's like, "Well, then, your uncle was like a semi-pro golfer for a while or a pro golfer for a while. You could try that." I was like, "Well, what about playing for the Lakers?" And he goes, "Listen, listen.
Let's bring it back to reality.
Let's go like this. And he goes like this. He goes, do you look like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? I was like, no. He's like, do you look like Michael Cooper? I was like, no. He's like, do you look like Magic Johnson? And and I'm like, well, they're really tall, right? And he goes, yeah, they're like 6'7", 6'8".
How tall are you?
I'm 6'1".
Okay.
My dad is 6'1", right?
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, our family, the genes, we don't have NBA genes. I'm just going to put it there. And I said, you're right. They look a lot different than me and they look different than you. And if I'm going to look like you when I'm older, if I'm going to be your height or whatever, how can I be taller or bigger than you? Cause you know, my dad's he's not like frail, but he's like, you know, he's like 160 pounds.
He's like that, yeah.
So, he's like, yeah, you're just gonna. I was like, well, what about baseball? I guess, you know, because started to collect baseball cards, and you flip over the card and you see this guy is 6'2", 210 pounds, 5'10", 190, and you're like, oh, these are regular sized people.
Yeah.
They're just regular sized guys, but they're just good. Okay, I'll play baseball. So 9-year-old year, play little league. That was why. Because I wanted to get a cool car and have money to get a cool car. And I was like, well, baseball players make good money, so I'll just play Major League Baseball. Yeah. There was no discussion of, oh, the odds of this are slim. Wow. None of that. I had never played.
From a young age, you were like, I'm going to go pro with this.
Yeah, that was it.
Going for it.
That was it.
Wow.
And my first coach said, you suck. You should probably go play soccer because you can't hit and you're really erratic with your throwing and you're running fast and you have a lot of energy and you can like catch the ball really well, but you suck. And then I told him, well, I'm going to be a Major League All-Star. And he like taps me on the head and he's like, okay, son. Okay. So I was like, determined to prove him wrong.
Yeah,
chip on my shoulder, big chip. My dad gets me a book called The Techniques of Modern Hitting. And it was from Wade Boggs, who at the time was a batting champion for the Red Sox. I read it. Then 10-year-old year, I'm the best player on the team. Suddenly I'm hitting over 400. I'm like hitting lasers everywhere. And I'm still like I'm a little kid. I'm not like a big, strong kid or anything like that.
10 years old.
No, but I'm saying relatively speaking, I was probably in the bottom 20% of size for the kids. Like my freshman year of high school, I was 5'2", 105 pounds.
Wow.
So, you know, I was little. But I was steady. I ate really well. I worked out a lot. And I just was like every day. It was like prison workouts. You know, I'm in my room doing 100 push-ups, mad that some other kid is better than me. And I had like a rival, and I'd just be thinking like, I just have to be better than Andrew Rodriguez. I have to be better than Darren Surdock. I have to be better than Jason Zila. Like all these kids that I had like on my list.
Wow.
Like I had to assassinate them by passing them, you know, batting average, hitting more home runs, striking out more kids, whatever. So then that book helped me so much. I started reading other books. I read Nolan Ryan's Pitcher's Bible, Tom Seaver's book, all these guys that were like Hall of Fame players. I started reading their books, and then I started thinking like they think, because like we're saying with authors, it's a message to the future, right?
Right.
But when you write something, it's literally what you're thinking. And if you read it, you're reading what that person's thoughts are.
In theory, yeah.
So you're absorbing their thoughts, and if you can then translate that, it's like this hourglass flips, and then suddenly you have a certain amount of time to make it happen in real life, what they've written down.
Wow.
And that's so that like literally that visual inspiration, I just looked at it like I'm just building myself up like Legos, and I just need to add this skill and this skill and this skill. And I was like 100% determined. And
so did you always know you wanted to be a pitcher, though?
No.
How'd you determine what position you wanted to really kind of focus on?
Well, I got drafted as a pitcher, but I played outfield in college. So I played center field, right field, first base. I did everything. I'm left-handed, so I was limited.
I know, yeah.
But I was just very competitive, and I wanted to help the team win. And I was, you know, like the best hitter on the team and the best pitcher on the team. And so I just did both, you know, most of the time. I mean, it took me time to like level up to that because I wasn't physically the same size as everybody. I was always smaller until probably like senior year of high school. And then I got mono my senior year of high school and lost like 27 pounds, and then had to work my way back. And then freshman year of college, I broke my back, and then had to work my way back. And then sophomore year, state player of the year, you know, the first award I'd ever really won in a singular sense, like MVP of the league and the state. Kind of a cool deal. Get a full ride to go to Loyola Marymount. Our team was terrible. Got in lots of fights with the coach because he just didn't know what was going on, and we disagreed on stuff, and I'm very self-motivated. I don't need anybody to tell me what to do. I'm going to do it myself. And he had all these stupid limitations on the way we were supposed to play. Like you weren't allowed to swing at curveballs until you had 2 strikes. So we were playing against advanced players, and they're like throwing curveballs for strikes, and if you just sat there and took it, you'd be 2 strikes because they could flip it in there. Yeah. And then I remember distinctly I hit a home run on a changeup. So the guy throws me a changeup. I hit a home run, and I run around third base, and like the third base coach won't give me a high five. And I'm like, this is BS.
Yeah, what?
I don't know if we're allowed to cuss or not, but in my head,
Yeah,
obviously,
no,
I said
yeah.
the full thing.
Yeah.
So I come in, all my teammates were like, dude, Homer, that was sick. And then the coach goes, hey, what pitch was that? I was like, I'm pretty sure it was a changeup. He just threw it like waist high right down the middle. And he goes, cool, you're done for the day. I was like, and I was batting like cleanup. I was like one of the top hitters. It was me and this kid, Chris Zacuto, that were like the best hitters on the team.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you're not playing the rest of the day. I'm like, are you serious right now? He goes, you know the rules. No swinging it off speed until 2 strikes. I'm like, that's the stupidest rule in baseball.
Why is that? Exactly.
He just wanted
for
to
the
have
betterment
control.
Of the team. It
He
sounds
just
like
this
it.
Napoleon
Yeah.
complex that he just wanted to control things, and
that
he
was
didn't
his
know
lesson
anything.
He was teaching you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, he taught me that lesson. And so I got drafted in the 5th round. I never looked back. I got signed by the Rangers, and then I was just through the minors, and that was it. But I'd been through a lot of adversity with these injuries and stuff, so that I knew when I was healthy, I was like time to go, and time to like hammer
Made the
it.
most of that
yeah,
time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how'd you decide to retire?
That's kind of a funny story.
We've never.
I had a 5-year contract with the Angels.
Mm-hmm.
I got hurt in 2015. I needed elbow surgery, and recovering from that, like the reason why I know I needed elbow surgery is because my shoulder started hurting. I was like, oh, this is bad. It's starting to like get systemic, right?
Yeah.
So I have this problem where I can't straighten my arm out. So if you see, like, this is my left arm and this is my right arm. So I've got about what is that, like
painful?
a foot of range of motion that I can't move. So I can only move my arm in about 60 degrees of rotation, as opposed to like
touching your
like
shoulder.
150.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so I'm missing about 80 or 90 degrees of rotation because of bone spurs, no cartilage, stuff like that. I had 5 arm surgeries along the way. First at 22 years old, then I had one at 27, and then another one at 30. Yeah, 30, and then another one at 34 or whatever. So, my contract was up, or that year. So 2016 was my last year with the Angels. But during spring training, before I got to spring training, I said, hey, my shoulder hurts. I need to get it scanned. I need an MRI. And they're like, no, you're fine. It's fine. No big deal. And I'm like, no, it's not fine. I've had a couple arm surgeries. Like, I know it's not fine.
Yeah.
Like, the Angels have this thing.
It's not like you want it to hurt.
Yeah, I want
like,
to play.
hey,
I'm here to, like, they're paying me a lot of money. I want to be on the field.
Right.
So they made what I called a business decision, a business medical decision, as opposed to a winning percentage decision. And they let me, they tried to force me back onto the field to, like, say like it wasn't a big deal. So I'm out there and I like can't throw. I'm like throwing like 80 miles an hour. My arm is killing me. I'm like, listen, I can barely lift my arm up after playing catch, and like throwing like one bullpen session. So then they scan my arm in spring training. So we've lost about 6 months now in my recovery period, because if I would have got scanned, they would have been like, oh, it's messed up. You need to get fixed.
Right.
They're like, oh, yeah, it's really messed up. You have a tear in your rotator cuff, a tear in your bicep tendon, and you have this other problem with your labrum.
Yeah.
But if we rest it and you try some like injections or whatever, maybe it'll go away and it won't be a big deal.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, I think you're wrong, but at least we know what the problem is, and we'll work towards some sort of recovery. So then in like April of that year, I'm doing a rehabilitation start because I was building up strength, and the advice that I got from the medical team, there's two sets of the medical team. There's the team doctors and the team physical therapist. The team physical therapist is like, listen, you need to get jacked. You need to eat as much as possible, because if you have a tear, the only way it recovers is if you're eating too much, and then it fills in, basically like rebuilds the tear. So just lift weights, crank it up, as hard as you can, on everything, as much food, as much intensity, whatever, sleep as much as possible, drink as much water, and then that's the only way this is going to have any chance of recovering. So I do that for like 6 or 8 weeks. I'm at like 226 pounds, which is like easily 25 pounds more than I am today. So I'm just like shrugging the house. I'm just like doing everything I can to build everything around it, because the shoulder is like a microphone. It's like it's got all these muscles holding it in place, and it has to move in all these different directions, right?
Right.
So I'm doing a rehab start in Lancaster or something like that, and I threw 3 innings, and I think I gave up like 1 hit, and I struck out a bunch of guys, and I wasn't throwing very fast, but I could still pitch.
What was like your okay, this is a solid pitch. How fast was it?
As a starting pitcher at the end of my career, like 93, but at the height of my velocity when I was a relief pitcher and just allowed to throw 1 inning, 97. Fastest pitch I ever threw was like 98, and that was to Ichiro in 2007 or 2009. And it's like a max effort thing. So for anybody that works out, like imagine doing like a 1 rep max squat, like as heavy as you can do it, as fast as you can. That's what it feels like to throw as hard as you can. So in that start, I throw 3 innings and they're like, hey, we want you to go back out for a 4th inning. I'm like, dude, my shoulder is killing me. I can't. So I go out there and literally rip my bicep tendon off the bone. Like I felt it happen, and it was so awkward. It was so weird. So you have 2 bicep tendons. That's the bi, right? So you have one that goes like into the top of your clavicle, and then one that goes up at the top up here, like into your shoulder. So I tore one of them, and I literally couldn't pick up my arm. Like that was it. I was like if you would have lifted my arm up, I couldn't hold it. I like literally couldn't hold.
So painful.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was terrible. And I'd already had 4 arm surgeries at this point, right? And so I already knew what a bad arm felt like.
Yeah.
And so I go in there and I stare right at the coach, and I'm like, who told you to do this? He's like, they told us to send you out there no matter what for the 4th inning. And I was like, I told you I can't do this. And they're like, we're sorry. And I'm like, I need shoulder surgery now. So we go in, do full shoulder surgery. The doctor was like, hey, this is your recovery period. You'll probably be able to play next year if you go for it, but you have to be careful. Just, work your way up. So
how do you be careful as a pitcher?
It's not easy. Yeah, because you're literally throwing as hard as you can.
Yes.
So all 2016 then, I'm rehabbing. I'm in Scottsdale, Tempe, doing our rehab stuff down there. And I'm ready to go for 2017. But
so at this point, you were planning on going back?
Yeah, I was planning on going back. And then I was looking at buying a really cool car or buying a car dealership. I had like a little bit of money saved up, and I was like, okay, I want to do one or the other. And what it looked like was I was going to buy this car called the McLaren F1, which is like the pinnacle of modern cars. And I was going to sign with the Padres. That was like my plan. So the Padres were talking to me, and I was talking to their pitching coach and their general manager, who I knew from Texas. And they were going to come watch me like in a couple days throw a bullpen or something. And I was fully recovered. I was like ready to go, throwing the ball over 300 feet in practice, and like throwing probably 90 miles an hour again off the mound. So I was good. And they do these things where they sign a player to like a small base contract, and then if you stay healthy, you get all these incentives, and so you make like way more. So you make like a lot of money, and that's kind of the enticement thing. So the Padres signed a player like while I was not really negotiating, but I was going to sign with him. If they were saying, hey, here's the minimum salary, but you can make this much, I would have been like, yes, okay, San Diego's cool.
Right, yeah.
I'll get a tan. We have 1 kid at this point, right?
Oh, okay.
We have Valentina. We just had Valentina in spring training of 2016.
Wait, okay.
And so I was living in Newport Beach, Corona Del Mar. And I was like, okay, cool. Like my family's still around. I could like San Diego sounds great. It'd be nice. And they signed a player I didn't like. And I had been offered the stores here in Fresno. And I was like, well, I either play with this person who I feel like is miserable. We don't like each other, and I don't like him at all. And I played with him previously, and I don't want to be on his team.
Right.
Or I can go invest my money in the dealership, and then commit to that, be a dad, race some cars, live locally in a nice big house that's way cheaper than it is in Orange County.
Right.
And have a pretty good quality of life and just accept my fate and say, I've had 5 arm surgeries. I don't need a 6th, because it's always a risk. And I want to be a race car driver and a dealer owner. And that was one choice. Or play with one more season and try to, for selfish reasons, effectively at that point. Because I knew I wasn't going to be the same type of player I was in 2011 or 2012 or whatever. So I was like, okay, the team's not that good, realistically. This guy's miserable. He's going to make me miserable. I've got a kid. I want to focus on that.
Right.
I want to be there for my kids.
Family, yeah.
Okay, I'll do the car dealership thing and I'll just pivot. And that was it. And then
it's a very mature decision, though.
Well, I was like 30.
Next phase of life,
yeah,
right?
I was like 35, 36 years old. So I had been in the majors for 12 and a half years at that point. But what it came down to is I have a friend named Gene. He's a doctor, orthopedic surgeon from Houston. And he said, hey, listen, like realistically, your arm is like effed hard. It's bad.
Right.
And you have so many bone spurs and no cartilage left in your elbow. And yeah, you can throw 90, 91, but like you might sever a nerve at some point from all those things. Like something breaks and severs a nerve. He's like, then you won't ever be able to pick your kid up.
I was going to say quality of life.
Do you want to pick your kid up like this?
Yeah.
Or do you want to try to like hoist them right-handed?
Right.
And I was like, oof, that's bleak. So I felt like, hey, as a business owner, I can still have a financial path forward, and I can be the dad that, I mean, realistically, I can have the family that I didn't have growing up. I can have the quality of life I didn't have growing up,
Right.
and I can provide that for my wife and my family.
Your family, yeah.
My wife goes, Fresno?
I know, right? What
What?
was her reaction?
Yeah.
San Diego or Fresno?
Yeah. And we were living in Corona del Mar, so it was
Yeah,
a
beautiful.
tough sell for her. So
Yeah.
I didn't really sell it to her. I just said, this is what's happening.
This is what's happening.
We didn't have a discussion.
Amazing
I was like,
opportunity. We're going.
Yeah,
And she
and
I mean, here's the thing.
feet
Unless
dragging.
you know somebody that lives here, Fresno is not necessarily a destination yet. Hopefully, it will be eventually.
I knew
But,
nobody.
unless you're driving through, which I got often, or you know somebody here, why would you come? You know?
You had to buy a car for me, or go eat
Exactly, right?
at one of these awesome restaurants we have, or something like
Yeah.
that. Realistically,
Yeah. No, I mean, I say that, at the time, though, I feel like that it's getting better. Obviously, we have a lot more to do and close to a lot of things. But so you had never personally been to Fresno before this.
I had never. I mean, I
Or
had
before
visited
moving.
Fresno. I had been to Yosemite once or twice with my friends. I had played in the state championship here at Fresno City College one time in,
Oh, okay.
in 2000. So yeah, no, I knew nobody. I
Right.
just toured it. I drove around and I drove up and down Van Ness, and I was like, whoa. And then I
This
looked at
is
Zillow
wild.
and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, that's all these houses cost?
I know.
This is crazy.
I
Like,
know.
this is awesome.
That in Orange County or
Completely
SoCal?
different. Yeah, it's 5 times more
Totally different,
expensive
right?
down there. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that was like, well, listen, it doesn't matter how my house is worth. It matters how cool it is. And it matters, like, if my wife and I are really going to have kids, we need a big house to do all this stuff. And
Right.
it's right down the street. Financially, the dealerships have a lot of upside because they were really underperforming. And the people I've met, I was like, okay, cool. So it's farmers and doctors, and like that's the majority of my clients here. Then business owners, I'm like, that's cool. I can jive with that.
Yeah.
And I just took the plunge based on my passion for the car brand. And I'd been in the car business for like, I guess 5 years at that point.
Oh, you had? Okay.
Yeah, my first car dealership was 2012, but that was because I started a racing team in 2009.
Yeah. Well,
So while I was still
know.
playing,
We need to talk about that too.
it's not much to say. If you like racing,
Yeah.
eventually you get roped into some sort of race car ownership, and then it's like an Airbnb. You're like, oh, if I get a couple of these, I can rent them out and then like generate revenue somehow.
Interesting.
But just like an Airbnb, like it can go sideways pretty quickly once people start crashing your cars, thrashing
Right.
your houses. It's sort of so. Then I started my own team, and then I had managers for that, and then kind of a couple different iterations. But we ended up like winning championships and stuff, and it was
That's
pretty cool.
amazing.
I have trophies for race wins
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
What
And
type of cars?
we started with Mazda Miatas, worked our way
Nice.
up to Porsches, and then eventually
Wow.
went to the GT3 level, which at the time was an Acura NSX. And we had one of 2 Acura NSX race teams. And then I sold the race team in 2018 after I retired because the operator of the racing team really had a good relationship with Honda. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm a Porsche guy at the end of the day.
Right.
And unless they're going to give me a Honda dealership, like, why am I racing Hondas but selling Porsches and Audis and BMWs? It makes
Right.
no
doesn't,
sense.
Doesn't fit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of, we parted ways. I sold the team off, and then, took some assets out of it, meaning like I kept like the racing trailer and stuff, and then I traded the
cool.
racing trailer towards like a Ferrari team to get like some, coaching and like operational stuff, because racing's expensive, obviously. So I was like, hey, if I give you guys this trailer, like, can you guys service my car and do some race stuff with me?
So
So
cool.
I did that for a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I just have a very extensive bucket list as a dreamer, and then racing was always on there. So racing's still on there.
I know. Tell me about your goal in racing now.
Yeah, the goal is to go, win some of these like world-class level endurance racing events like Le Mans or Daytona, Sebring, stuff like that. I'm off on that. I'm not on that path right now. I'm kind of off that path. I'm making some plans to get back on it, but without, making the right business decisions at the dealership, it's just a big money pit. And so
Yeah.
you have to find a way
And
to
time
correlate
commitment,
that.
I imagine, right? And
Yep.
you're already probably feeling like you need to be 5 places at once. Sometimes.
Yeah,
You have
well,
a lot going on.
Right, but the team aspect of the business, the team aspect of racing, the team aspect of sports and parenting, all that, like, it's all sort of thematic for me. When I became a better team player, I was able to have better results, because when you're playing selfishly or by yourself, you don't really have the people that are willing to dive for the ball for you if they think you're a jerk. This is kind of how it
Truth.
goes.
That's like really deep. I feel like that was probably a lesson you had to learn along the way, right?
I sort of learned it by accident because I spoke Spanish when I was in the minor leagues. And so I had teammates that were from the Dominican, and I'd speak Spanish with them. And then I noticed that they would play really hard behind me because I was nice to them, whereas some of the other players that were from, maybe the South or something like that, that would say things that were offensive to these guys occasionally and refer to them in derogatory terms. Some of those double plays didn't get turned.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like some of those guys, like they didn't really die for that ball, the way they did with me, and they wouldn't communicate because you have to communicate in team sports. So if I had a tendency to throw certain pitches, guys would hit them to certain parts of the field. Yeah. So I'd move. So we had a shortstop in Savannah named Jose Morbon, really talented player. I'd said, Jose, I need you to play to the left a little bit, and he'd be like, hey, I'm the shortstop, you're the pitcher. And I'm like, Jose, por favor, a la izquierda, porque tiro a slider y el batea allá. And he goes, okay, papi, so he takes one or two steps to the left.
Yeah.
The guy hits it right where I think he's going to hit it. He kneels down, picks it up, throws a guy out of first base. He looks like a genius. Yeah. So he looks like the genius, right? Because he's the one that made the play that was a tough play to make. But I prepped him for it. I said, this is what I'm going to do. So I would tell the shortstop and the center fielder and the second baseman how to read my pitches. So I would tell them what I was going to throw before I threw it. And so when you have these conversations with the guys, it's the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to get to the majors.
Right.
If the shortstop is good because you're tipping him off on what's going on, he knows what's happening. Yeah. He's going to make more plays. He's going to move up. Yeah. He got to the major leagues. So it's like by being a better teammate, you make a better team. And in that specific lesson, I had a teammate that went to Baylor. He was completely clueless, and he was one of those tone deaf people, which
like
everybody
socially or what?
Yes.
Okay.
So he got drafted and got signed for like $900,000. Okay, which is really high, and a lot of people don't get that. So he's looking at this guy, Chris. He's like, well, yeah, Chris, I mean, like, we both went to college in Texas, but, you were like a 25th rounder. So if you have like one bad season, you're going to get released. Whereas they gave me $900,000. They've invested in me. I probably got 3 or 4 years to figure it out.
Yeah.
He's like, Tom, you'll probably never make the majors because you don't throw hard enough. And I'm sitting there going, this guy, what? How do you say that's your teammate? That's the closer. You're telling me he doesn't throw hard enough? Like, he's going to save your ass. He's going to save the game and get you that win. Yeah. But that guy never made it out of A-ball because he had this sort of like Bradley Cooper Wedding Crashers vibe. And he just thought everything was supposed to be like crab cakes and football, and like everything was supposed to be easy for him. Yeah. And he was not well liked, and he didn't work hard. He just was very entitled. He had like, instead of white privilege, he had like first rounder privilege or whatever, at which so once you get to the minors, it doesn't matter if you sign for $5,000 or $5 million. Like if you suck, like you're going to get exposed. Right. And if you're good, you're going to move up. But he thought that he was guaranteed a slot in the majors at some point. So, you see these people make these mistakes in front of you, and you're like, don't want to be like that guy. And so
I mean, ultimately, it is a business at the end of the day. Yeah. Athletics, even the entertainment industry. I remember there were certain talent that we worked with that were a-holes.
And if they don't show up
like
for
they're
work,
not gonna if they're not reliable, if they're treating people disrespectful, if they're horrible to work with, they have crazy demands, who wants to hire that person or draft that person or play and work with that person? So I mean, what a concept to be kind to people.
It's weird. Well, it just to meet people where they're at also. True. Right? And say like, hey, you do this thing. I think if you tried this aspect of it, you might even be better than you are now. And with sports, there's a lot of that tweaking, but now in sales, it's the same thing. Because I get to read, like a creep, I get to read everybody's emails. So when somebody submits a lead on a car and they say, I want to buy this car, I'm interested in the price, and you see a salesperson send like a crappy response, I immediately go to the salesperson and be like, did you think before you hit enter on this one? Yeah, like you hit send. Did you proofread this? Like, what are you doing? And because I want that guy to do better. It's a commission business, so he loses if he doesn't sell. But this guy's sending an email to Fremont, to Fresno, to Pleasanton, to Bakersfield, to St. Like this guy, it's not a unique situation. If you have a white car with a black interior, they probably have those everywhere else. Right. So it's whoever's the nicest and treats you the best. And so as a client, I got into the car business in a way because I was a car buyer. And so I'm in my 20s, playing in the major leagues, buying cool cars, like young and dumb, spending too much money, the classic thing. But when people would treat me like crap, I was like, you should probably be very careful about this, because one day I'll have more money, and then you're missing out on all those sales.
Oh, it's true.
And so I developed that kind of mindset because I worked at Nordstrom's. And so when I was in the minor leagues making no money, I worked at Nordstrom's, learned how to sell, learned how to talk to people, ask them questions, and really kind of get them what was their fit. Because if you like if you're like shopping, I tell everybody this, if you're shopping in July, you buy a leather jacket, you have to buy that on sale, knowing that you need it later. You don't need a leather jacket in July.
True.
So if the salesperson sells you that and they make you stretch to buy it, you get a big commission on an expensive leather jacket at Nordstrom's.
Right.
But if they return that, because you can return anything at Nordstrom's, if they bring it back, you've lost.
Oh, really?
You don't make any money. There's no commission.
Revoke the commission if they return an item.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%.
I did not realize that.
So you need to sell someone a polo shirt, pair of pants,
Something
pair of
they'll actually
socks,
wear and
an outfit.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of be like a consultant for these people. And it's so that mindset versus the sell me this pen, Wolf of Wall Street salesperson, two totally different things. And so there's a lot more consistency when you build the trust and you sell someone. You're like, oh, what are you, like a 40 long? Like, let me get you some like 36 pants, 36, 32 is probably your size. Like when you can do the like the county fair assessor thing, like, what are you, man, about $1.85? When you can do that, then you can get people's trust, and you can, so if like a woman walks in and she's like, hey, I want to buy something for my husband for Father's Day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, how are you going to help her?
Right.
How big is your husband? How tall is he? What colors does he like? What colors are already in his closet? How do you match all these things together? Does he wear a lot of black and white? Does he wear a lot of earth tones?
Right.
So it's like, you're not going to sell somebody like some crazy stuff that he's never going to wear. Is he conservative? Does he golf?
Right.
So,
all the things.
anyways, so that's always carried with me since that experience. But that was because I saw people do it well and do it poorly, and I had experience with both. And
you were observing, and you're like, okay.
Well, it's commission based. There's money on the line.
Yeah.
If you do it well, you get paid. It's like a great incentive,
Clearly, yeah.
So
you come to Fresno. Did you start with the 3 dealerships, BMW, Audi, and Porsche? Okay. So speaking of relationships, team building, connections, what was that experience like for you coming to Fresno, having known no one really, right?
Terrifying.
Right?
Terrifying. I didn't know anything. I knew everything about the cars. I loved the cars.
Which is great. You're knowledgeable. You have that, obviously, and many things going for you. But, like, how was that? Building relationships, meeting people, introductions. I'm always curious by people who aren't from here and move here.
The best thing you can do when you get into a new business is fire the bad people immediately.
Yeah, the toxic.
Yes.
You mean? Yeah.
So the guy that was the general manager of the Audi and Porsche store was actually like holding deals over salespeople's heads and like a crook. So what he would do is he'd say, hey, I have this card that's going to pay a lot of commission if I sell it, but I'm a size 11 in Gucci. And so you need to get me a pair of shoes. Otherwise you're not going to get this. Cause a commission for selling a big expensive car, $2,000 or $3,000 for a salesperson, $600 a set of shoes. You're sitting there thinking, well, okay, I net 1,400 out of it. Maybe I need to do this. I found out about this. Guy was gone a week into ownership. I found out about this. Guy's gone immediately.
Good for you. Good for you.
So then I became the general manager. And I was not prepared for that.
And you were just,
I was over my head.
Overwhelmed.
And I didn't know anybody. I just had to learn. Right. And Ann Zimmerman, our CFO, she is an absolute wizard. And she's been in the car business a long time. And so she becomes like my mom. And I go into her office and I drink a water or root beer, like literally, I like root beer or ginger ale. And then I would sit there and ask her questions about the car business. And then I would stay from, 8:30, 9 in the morning until 9, 10, 11, 12 at night, reading, learning, like looking at the statements, figuring things out, reading through everything, trying to teach myself all these systems and softwares and stuff I had never even dreamed of needing to know. I thought I was going to be I thought I was going to be the owner and be like, yo, Easy Street. Hey, we're selling some cars today. Good. I'm going to go do some racing. See you guys in 3 days. I didn't think I was going to be on the ground, actually boots on the ground in the trenches doing it. So when I was forced to do that, I kind of petitioned to Audi and Porsche to help me, and so what they did was they sent in consultants to coach me on how to be a general manager, and they put me through like little mini schools, and it was very valuable.
Very cool.
And it allowed me to learn how the politics of the car business work with the factories, which is another West Wing type of thing.
Sure.
And but then also just by being there and the volume of people coming in and just walking around and being present, they're like, wait, wait, are you the baseball guy? And I was like, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, like, do
baseball
you want an Audi A4? You know? So
Yeah.
I had to learn,
Yeah.
like, on my feet, sink or swim, this is either the best financial decision or we're going to go bankrupt if this doesn't work situation.
You don't have the personality to fail, though. I feel like you were determined to, we're doing this.
I mean, I've definitely failed at stuff. I've started stuff. I've sold businesses that weren't well, but I think in general, if I'm involved in something, I'm willing to go way further than I should in order to get something there. But what I tell everybody, anybody that's a business owner, thinking about becoming a business owner, the first thing that happens when you become a business owner, when you either buy a business or start a business, you go broke.
Sure.
You go underwater, and then there's like this swing down where you're learning and you're figuring out how the business works. And then eventually you get back to zero. And then at that point, you look at the trajectory and you're like, okay, am I swinging fast enough to like break financial gravity? Have I learned the lessons that I need to learn? And have I become the business owner I need to be? Where are the leaks? And then you can't fall in love with the projections. You have to look at what's really happening. Right. And I was taught along the way by a couple of really good consultants in the business and stuff like that. But keep in mind, this is not like none of my family was in the car business. I didn't inherit anything.
You had
like
a passion for cars.
I just like cars.
Passion for the brands, but operationally, you're learning a lot.
Starting from zero, yeah. And it was like I'm a white belt with the kids. I'm starting all over. And granted, I had a lot of team building, sports psychology, these type of like personal strength. Tactics. The personal strength and customer service aspect of it. But in terms of the business, the car business works because you make little crumbs on all the little things. You sell a hat, make $5. You sell a set of tires, make $30. Someone does a service, and you make $200 or something like that. So you sell a car, you make $1,000. So there's all these little crumbs that add up. It's not there's not huge margins. So when you sell a car that's $50,000, you might only make $800 or $900 net on that entire car. That's it. And because it's very competitive with all the other stores that are all trying to sell the same car, so you have to it's about not letting the water drip off the table on the floor. You need to send the bucket there and catch it before it goes away. Right. So mistakes cost you a lot of money. If the finance guy makes a mistake, the company charges you back, the bank charges you back the $1,500, that mistake, boom. If you don't put the right paperwork in the car deal, the customer gets upset and you might have to, and then they might come after you in small claims court. You have to settle for $5,000. There's a lot of this type of stuff that happens. And there's all these vendors that are after you all the time for weird stuff like, oh, we're going to generate leads. If you don't have cars, you're not going to get any leads. You can't sell stuff if it's not there. So it doesn't even matter. So you have to commit to this growth process. And it's tough because everybody's on commission. So you have to look at people and say, listen, it's going to be lean for a couple months, but in 6 months we'll have come out of that and it'll be way better than it would have been because we have to try this thing. And when you're a rookie and you're telling people that they're wrong about something, even if you're right, massive resistance. So you have to build trust all the time.
So that and motivate, continue to motivate your team to see the light at the end of the tunnel kind of, right?
Yes. Long-term thinking.
Yeah.
It's all, and this is a consistency for me. It's all about having what I like to call low time preference. Being a good parent, being a good investor, being a business owner, it has to be low time preference. What I do today impacts me 10 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever. It's not what I do today pays me today. If you think like that, you have a tendency to spiral out of control and not catch things. You have to think of it like you're driving a train. You know what I mean? And you're adding additional cars to the train. And that's like slowing the train down, changing directions in the train, going around corners in the train. There's only so much change you can impart into that before you flip it off the tracks. And the reason why a lot of people fail in the car business is because they try to do things too quickly. So I had some experience with that because I was a dealer owner before I got here, and I had watched the culture of our Mazda stores and stuff that I had in Chicago grow and do better. Some did better than others. And I knew what worked and what didn't work to a degree, not to the granular level, because you only learn that by, jumping in the mud pit.
Doing it. Yeah. So did you meet people through being on the floor and
literally,
right?
Yep. Going to charity events.
That's going to events.
Dropping kids off at school.
Right.
I think the best friends that I've met in town, I've met sort of randomly on the showroom floor through charity events or at the school drop-off line, so to
Right.
speak. And
Like
it's like,
through the kids, yeah.
that's what it is. I mean,
Right.
you know, like we would run into each other dropping our kids off at school a
Yeah.
couple years ago,
Yeah.
you know, and I run into all sorts of other people, and, you know, then it's like, hey, what do you know, like, let's grab lunch sometime.
Yeah.
So because there's no traffic in Fresno, you can like plan things at pretty
So
slim
true.
margins. Whereas like
Right.
if you're in LA, like someone has to live within like that 3 mile radius or work.
100%.
You can't just like meet for lunch. Like
Yeah.
everybody can get to Westwoods or Pismo's or Annex or,
All the things.
you know,
Anesso, right
Anesso.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like you can get to all these places pretty quickly. You can get
Yeah.
to Heirloom quickly. So if you say, hey, you want to meet there in 30 minutes, you can get there.
Right.
You can't do that in LA.
No.
And so that was, but living in LA and being used to the pace of that for so long, I think like I still have that mindset. I'm going to cram everything I can into a day because I have all this extra space that's not spent in traffic.
Not spent commuting.
Yep.
I know. I had an hour and a half commute for one of my jobs. Got a lot done, but it was on the phone,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
This was pre-podcast day, so I
Mhm.
wasn't even like learning anything. It was really more just making rolling calls at that point. But yeah, there's a convenience factor about it too. I mean, your dealerships are literally 4 minutes away from here, if that.
Yep.
You live close, your kids are close in school, all the things.
Yep.
So now, you're here. You've been here since Valentina was a baby, right?
Since I've been
was
living
Ken-
here since November 2016.
2016.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is home.
It's like 7 years now. Yeah. And you know, there's always this thing as a business owner to say, oh, well, what's next? You
Right.
know? And that's a little bit of a trap psychologically because it means you're not grateful for where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, where do I want to be in 20 years? That's a little bit different, you know, because then you're saying, oh, I have this huge mountain to climb and I want to get there and then reward myself with something or whatever.
Right.
But because Fresno presents like it's like a very unique place to live in California. It's not like other California cities. And I've lived in other California cities. We love it here, and we have this ability to have a high quality life. We have a cool house with space. You can't get, you know, the type of backyard that you can get in Fresno in Orange County, you know,
It's true.
for anywhere near the same amount of money.
Right.
And, you know, so you spend less on housing. You might spend more on travel because you got to connect through SFO or LAX if you want to fly somewhere. But you can just drive to a lot of these places. You can drive to Carmel. You can drive to LA. You can go up to Shaver, go up to Bass Lake. You know, you can go to Slow or some of these other places. And so as long as you have places to go when it gets to be too hot or whatever, and even if it's only to grab a burger
Yeah.
up at Hungry Hut in
Yeah.
Shaver, you know, even if it's only that, it's
Right.
something. And you and the kids can do that. And so we do little things like that in the summertime. But my kids are pretty entrenched. You know, they're doing martial arts class. They're like orange belts in jiu-jitsu.
I
It's
freaking
radical.
Love that.
It's radical. Yeah.
I was talking to Liz about that the other day, and it makes me want to get the girls in there. I'm like,
Yeah.
give them the gift of not only confidence, strength, mental strength, physical strength, but self-defense. I'm like, that is badass.
Yeah, and athleticism. And I think
And athleticism, yeah.
I played a lot of different sports as a kid. When I was like, you know, 8 to 10 years old, I played basketball, I played soccer, I played like flag football, I played all this different stuff. And it helped me understand how to move my body around to like run and, you know, kick a ball, throw a ball, catch a ball, all these other different things. And what they say is that when you're developing kids, like athletically, you know, if you give them like a really well-rounded approach to all these other sports when they're like little kids, like toddlers and into young, like preteen, then by the time they focus in on something, they've kind of worked the whole Vitruvian man, all the angles of their body. They've run and they've cut on the grass and they've done this and they've slid and they've jumped and they've done all these things, you know, and it gets them more prepared to focus on fine-tuning skill development.
Right.
So if you think about golf as an example, like how gnarly of a sport that is, it's like just tiny little variations in the club face allow you to hit the ball differently. That's a completely different sport than, you know, jiu-jitsu, obviously.
Right.
But if you do jiu-jitsu or gymnastics or something like that, then you know how to use your hips. If you know how to use your hips, then you might be a better golfer one day.
Like skill building. But I
Yeah.
feel like the girls are getting to the age where they can tell you, Dad, I don't want to do that. Or Mom.
Yeah, and that's a
you know?
phase too, right?
So like, that's hard.
So that happened. And
Yeah.
what happened was Katerina, our younger daughter, saw an opportunity to be better at something than Valentina and decided to keep going.
Yeah.
And then Valentina was like, whoa, she's making a lot of progress. I think I want to do this again.
Yeah.
because I don't want my little sister to beat me up if I give her crap. I need to be able to defend myself. So in a way, it's become an arms race with the two girls in a peaceful way.
Yeah.
But psychologically there's some aspect of wanting to keep the pole position as the older daughter to be better at everything than the younger daughter.
Yeah.
But Valentina is really more of an artist, and I, of course, encourage her to play something like tennis or something like that, because I think that's kind of how she's built. Whereas I think Katerina has more options because how muscular she is. She's like so physically strong and so energetic, and she wants to like run really fast and play sports like soccer and stuff.
Yeah.
And she wants to do, like, if she was a baseball player, she'd be more of a third baseman, and V would be more of a pitcher, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how siblings can be so different?
So different.
Even you and your brother. Your brother's an artist, and you were in a totally different industry, totally different interests, grew up in the same household. I'm just like kind of mind blown by that as a parent, because you think, oh yeah, your kids are going to do the same activities. They're raised in the same house, eating the same food, doing all the same things. But I'm like, they are wildly different.
Yeah. There's so many things that go into that. The birth order, the age difference, the astrological sign, male, female, lefty, righty, Myers-Briggs Enneagram type, diet. My brother ate like crap. He had a horrible diet.
Yeah.
My brother is like 5'9", 145. I'm 6'1", 200. Right.
Yeah.
We're completely different body types. My brother was a really good baseball player, and then he quit because he didn't want to be CJ's little brother.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be coached. He didn't want to be doing the thing that I did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He wanted to do his own thing.
Do his own thing.
So he started rollerblading and skateboarding and doing that type of stuff in the 90s when he turned to like 13. So that's when he quit. And I was very disappointed because my brother was an all-star, like a Little League all-star. So was I.
Right.
He didn't have the commitment level I did. But my brother's body type, if he would have developed it, he could have been a shortstop or a second baseman or something like that. He wasn't. He didn't want to lift weights. He didn't want to work. He didn't want to have teammates. He didn't want to rely on anybody. He didn't want anybody to rely on him.
Yeah.
He wanted to just do his own thing as he saw fit. But physically, he could have been a baseball player professionally.
Wow.
And a couple years, I mean, this is like way back. So a bunch of my friends do adventurous stuff like cliff diving and motorcycling and stuff like that, like dirt bike enduro riding and stuff. So they were like, hey, let's do like a pickup baseball game. And my brother and I played catch for like a week in preparation for this, and he could still throw the ball like 80 miles an hour, having not thrown since he was 13 years old, as like a 30-year-old. So my brother, even though he's not like really muscular, he's really wiry, and so if he would have lifted weights, he would have been one of those people that's like just mega shredded, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he just wasn't motivated for that.
Right.
He didn't want to spend an hour in the gym. Absolutely not. So
and you have to be dedicated and motivated to take it to the next level. I
right.
imagine, yeah.
My brother wanted to be famous, so he would have been like a TikTok, like if he was 20 years old now, he'd be like a TikTok influencer type person. That's kind of more of his personality.
Speed, yeah.
Whereas I'm more of like an engineer, and I want to build things, and like, you know, like if you buy my thing because it's awesome, that's great, but I'm not going to sell it to you.
Yeah.
You know, my brother's like, hey, I've got stuff to sell. You know, it's like two different mindsets. So I'm, you know, I am an artist in my own way. I'm a photographer. I'm a painter. I draw.
Yeah.
I've been doing that for a long time. You know, I've been like
probably where Valentina gets it, don't you think?
Yeah. And
Liz is artistic in her own ways too, though.
Yeah. Liz is like really, like interior design wise, like that's like her like really mega niche. Whereas I'm more of like a floor plan architect, you know, and
Good
so
combo,
it's a great combo. Yeah. And so when we did the house in LA, we built a spec house together, and we worked on that, and it was really a fun project.
Yeah.
It was.
See, not many people could say it was a fun project building a house with their spouse.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like sometimes it can be stressful and be like, I just want to get this done. So for you to say it was fun, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, like I literally had it on my list, you know, and eventually when we built the house, we finished it, and it ended up in Architectural Digest. So I'm like,
that's amazing.
That's a cool checklist
Heck
thing to get off to. I sold it to Zed, the music producer, DJ guy.
I was going to say.
So he bought it.
Wow.
He recently sold it. So I sold it to him, I think in 2018. And then he sold it, I think, last year or earlier this year.
Wow.
And I had this whole master plan for how I want to develop it, but it was like, this super gnarly house in Beverly Hills, and it was really cool. And it was a
Very cool.
big financial project, but
I bet.
that was another path for me. If I didn't do the car dealership thing, I could have done that. I was
Like architecture, homes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's something like I drew the house, I angled it, I had all the proportions and everything kind of done, and then I gave it to the architect, and I was like, this is what I want to do. This is how I want it oriented on the land, and he kind of architected it all out and like enlarged it. And I was like, yo, I have a budget. Stop. You know what I mean? But I had all these weird things about it. So if you, anyways, so it's kind of a thing. I've had a chance to do all these things.
Yeah, really cool.
Participated in a team that wrote a book, and built a house, ended up in Architectural Digest. All these things are cool. So now I just need to do I think I still have to sell a script. I want to write a movie.
I was gonna say, so CJ, kind of in wrapping up, you've done a lot.
We're like halfway through.
I know, right?
Maybe,
I feel like we need to do a part 2 if you're down. What's next? I feel like you have a lot of moving parts, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And, where do you see your near future going?
Well, I just have to. So, this is how I live my life. This is my day, right?
Yeah.
I fall asleep at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I wake up at 12:30.
You fall asleep at 9 p.m.
Yes.
You wake up at a little past midnight
Yes.
every night.
Yes.
So are you somebody that functions on no sleep?
Correct.
Clearly.
Yes.
Okay.
So I sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night.
every night.
Sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 6 hours, but usually always less than the 7 or 8 thing. I was like, who has time for that?
And that's a thing.
Too much stuff to do.
Some people can function on little sleep. I am not one of those.
So my ideal day, this is how it kind of goes, is I put Max to bed. Usually, I put him to bed around 8:30 or 9, and then I sleep for a couple hours, and then I'm up and I just can't go to sleep. So then I do all my reading and my research and my emailing and all that stuff between 12 and 3, 12 and 4.
Wow.
And then I sleep again from like 4 to 5:30. If I have to do the bottle thing or the diaper thing or whatever, then
happening.
it's a niche thing that actually really helps us a lot, because then I'm totally alert and capable.
Yeah.
And so Liz, last night, she was like, "Hey, do you want to go give him a bottle?" I'm like, "I don't want to go give him a bottle, but I'm already awake." I was like in bed, like doom scrolling, like going through Twitter, like looking at the markets
X.
and all this other stuff. Yeah, X. And I'm like going through my emails and like writing responses and all this stuff, and like pre-scheduling everything and writing my tasks down. I make a lot of checklists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I wake up and I go with the kids.
So you're up at 12:30.
Yeah.
Until when?
3 or 4.
And then what? You take a little snooze at 3 or 4?
Yeah, I do like a little
cat nap?
like a cat nap,
Okay.
or yeah, and if depending on what time I wake up from the cat nap, that's when I work out. So
Okay.
I work out from like
workout.
4 to 5 or 4:30 to 5:30 or 4:30 to 5, depending on how much time I have. And that gets me going, and then I get the kids up and ready to go and dressed, and I take them to school, and Liz builds their lunches, and then the girls get themselves dressed.
Yep.
I get Dom or Max dressed. I get Dom changed. Liz takes Dom on a walk. I chug an espresso. I have a very specific method for my espresso.
Let's hear it.
Typically,
we're going there.
Frozen spoon under the drip, so the drip hits the frozen spoon.
Okay.
It does something metallurgically or temperature-wise, so it takes all the ashy, bittery taste out of the espresso, which is usually like licking the bottom of a trash can. And then I mix grass-fed butter or grass-fed cream, Malden's sea salt, and agave, and then I kind of spin up sometimes a little cinnamon.
Agave,
it's like
so it has a little sweetness.
Yeah, I don't do any sugar. I just do agave. So agave mixes better because it's already liquid.
Yeah.
This is like a really great life hack. And then you have it's the perfect temperature at that point, because usually it's like boiling hot. You don't want that. So anyways, rinse off the spoon, clean it, put it away.
So wait, sorry. After the agave, any milk? No.
Either grass-fed butter or like whole milk, but grass-fed. Yeah. My diet's pretty much like keto. I eat mostly meat, some vegetables. I'm experimenting with farming. So that window in between when I get up and when the kids get up, sometimes if I have 30 minutes, I'm out in the backyard, like pruning, like growing my potatoes and tomatoes and peppers and stuff like
Probably
that.
all self-taught, right?
When in Rome, right? We're in Fresno. You got to grow something.
You gotta, have some material to talk to all your farmer friends.
Right.
Too.
And then I have a composting project that I'm working on right now.
So cool.
And so I do that. And then I drop the kids off, and then I go to work in like shorts and a t-shirt, and I walk around, assess things, write my tasks for the day at work. And then if I have like a email that I got to respond to or anything pressing, I do that. And then I go back home, and then I either work out if I haven't worked out, or I just, hang out with Liz and Dominic for a little bit.
Sweet.
And then I, get dressed and go to work.
Yeah.
I won't work till 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I'm there on the ground doing it. And then, I go home, and then dinner with the kids, or hopefully, and then boom, start all over again.
Then bedtime routine. And
but that's it. It's that couple hours, and there's a way you can get yourself better at that, but it really comes down to eating a certain type of food helps you sleep better.
Yeah,
so when you fall asleep, you're all the way asleep.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Isn't there a name for like the carnivore diet?
Carnivore diet, yeah.
Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah. So for anybody
that?
that's interesting, yeah. So I've done this a couple times where I went hardcore carnivore, but I'm like low key carnivore.
It's called the caveman diet.
Yeah, there's like the lion diet where all you eat is like red meat and salt and water, and that's it. So you have to eat like organs. You have to eat like heart and liver and stuff like that. So I've learned how to cook all these things. So
you've eaten those things.
Oh yeah, I do liver. I like liver a lot actually.
Wow.
So like iron skillet, saute it in milk, like a little bit of seasoning on there, like cook it over somewhat low heat, and then crisp it at the end, like kind of like a steak, and then you slice it real thin, and then you can eat it. And it's
so you
palatable.
enjoy cooking.
I love cooking.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
amazing.
My ideal scenario is if I had like my own little brisket restaurant where I was just out like on Sundays just doing briskets.
Amazing.
So I'd sell cars 5 or 6 days a week, smoke brisket on Sundays.
Can you marry the two? Can you smoke brisket at one of
Yeah, we have a Traeger at the
not?
dealership. We actually have a Traeger at the
That's
dealership.
legit.
It's a thing, yeah.
Yes.
So what's next is just continuing like hiring people that can support my vision. Looking for people that are high level. We've hired some new people recently to help expand.
Oh, great.
We're building new dealerships, so we're moving the stores over to Clovis. We have about 10 acres. We're building a new Porsche store, a new BMW, new Audi. And then I'm in the process right now of like adding new brands. So we have some stuff to announce pretty soon. Not official yet, a couple more weeks. And then I'll have more brands to sell. So the goal is to be like one place, one name, all the cars. All the cars you want on the Lux level, if I'm the source for all those things, then it makes shopping really easy because then we become our own portal at that point. Right. So you control more of the vertical. And with a lot of the cars going electric, having electric charging stations on campus.
That's amazing.
And then a nice little coffee shop, maybe eventually a little outlet for my brisket.
Brisket on
the
weekend.
Show up, charge your car, eat some brisket tacos. Get an espresso with a proprietary Vace and CJ kind of thing, because I met him through this stuff too, and so
cool.
He's somebody that's inspiring for me locally in that regard as an entrepreneur.
Really cool.
So it's great. I mean, you can't be an entrepreneur in some of these cities. You can only do this in Fresno.
Right.
You can dabble in Fresno because the financial risk is lower. If you wanted to start a hair salon, and you could do that in Fresno, you can't do that in San Francisco.
I agree. I do think there's something to be said about how we really do support each other in Fresno. Try to support local. There's a reason why there's a lot of local restaurateurs with their own unique concepts. Obviously, there are franchises too and other major brands, but I do feel like there's something to be said about the local support. And it sounds like over the years you've met a lot of really cool people and influential people in the community that have helped you support your vision here too.
Yeah, it's all hand in hand. And I mean, if you have somebody that is willing to take their time and explain their business to you and talk about it in a transparent way, you ask questions, they're very intrigued to share that information, almost not really a mentorship thing, but just to get to know people. And if you have a passion that aligns with someone else's business and you meet the actual business owner, and I've met a lot of these other restaurateurs and stuff like that. And I asked one of them one time, I'm like, so how do you do the tri-tip like this? And he's like, oh, this is how we do it. And I was like, interesting. Not that I'm going to compete and start, but I'm just like, I like knowing all the stuff. How it's made is very interesting because who makes it? Where does it come from? And in Fresno, that line is so short because it's like the farmers are here. The products are here. 100%. The owner is back there. He's in the kitchen. He's behind the desk. He's in the office. He's upstairs. He's downstairs. the accessibility of the entrepreneurs here is much higher than it is anywhere else. And we don't have what I like to call like the hustler culture here, where people are like trying to put you together and make you buy stuff that you don't need. It's more like the entrepreneurial culture, and then like the I'll call it like the matriarchy patriarchy thing. Like it's like you meet the queen bee or the king of the castle, and that guy's like, yeah, this is how we do it. You know what I mean? And he's like, oh, you want to do stuff? Like, this is how we do it. Like, how do you guys do it?
Right. And
everybody kind of feeds off that, and it raises the level overall. So people that are willing to kind of get into process can. You know,
oh, it's true.
We all want to
like,
get better.
There's some competition, but I feel like most of it is really community driven. And one thing that I remember not loving about the LA scene was just that everybody wanted to be famous.
Which is
in
like
some way.
It's worthless.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
One of many reasons I left. But I don't feel that here at all. You know, I don't know, from your perspective, not being here and moving here, I feel like, yes, people are trying to make a name for themselves,
Sure.
but they're not necessarily trying to be famous or Fresno famous or whatever that looks like to them.
Well, this is a good thing. I figured this out when I was in Dallas, right? When you're surrounded by flat topography, the only thing that keeps you humble is somebody has a higher floor of their office or a taller building than you. That's the only thing in Dallas that like you can go on, right? Somebody has a bigger house, a flashier car collection, or their dad owns this building or they own this building or something like that. And my building's taller than your building, so therefore I'm better than you.
Yeah.
When you're in a place like Fresno that, you know, on a good day you can see the mountains and you can see like, you know, sort of God's splendor, it humbles you. And mountain people, as I like to think about it in that sense, or even beach people, coastal people, they're aware that the ocean could just be angry and wipe them out. Like they're aware of that finality and the powerlessness of being a person in a world created by like, you know, other forces.
Yeah.
But when you're in a city that it's only human forces influencing stuff, really, like it's just flat and it's just buildings, people get this ego thing because there's nothing humbling them. Whereas like, go try to go hiking, go hike Half Dome and let me know how big your ego is after that. That will humble your ass very quickly, right?
So true.
And so when you're and the beauty can humble you, you know, and I think so when you see people that are from certain places, whether it's Wyoming, which I have a particularly, you know, I have a very strong affinity for Wyoming, Colorado, whatever, you meet a lot of very humble people. Doesn't matter how much money they have. You know, and people in Fresno are like that. Like they have to get their hands dirty at work and they have to be physically present because otherwise people won't respect their business.
True.
Oh, that guy's at the coast all the time. That guy's in Tahoe. He's never here. You hear that as a derogatory thing that this person runs an absentee business. And so like that is the only thing that limits your success is if you're not physically present and people think you're big leaguing them because you're acting like you're LA, that's where you get nuked in Fresno.
So don't you think, in a way, having said that, probably hard to see now, but in a way, the whole change of you, like essentially being forced to be the GM of the dealerships that you just bought, might have been the best thing for you to be more present than maybe you would have been otherwise, right?
100%.
No offense, maybe you would have been that guy that was like, going all the places, doing all the things. Who knows, right?
Yeah, it's
what if?
The catalyst.
But in a way, you know, it's like, right?
It's for sure, because people can come see me and if they have a problem with me, they're going to leave a voicemail, they're going to come knock on my door, and I have to deal with that heat and that friction.
Right.
But the fact that I'm there, even if I can't fix the problem the way they want it fixed or whatever, even if they're scammers and they're trying to scam me on something, at least like they're taking a crack at me face to face, toe to toe. And there's a, I don't know, there's a value in that that's a little bit different than you would get, if I was at the beach. And people thought that I was better than them, and I was acting like that. If I'm showing up to work every day, I'm not better than anybody.
Right.
You know what I mean?
My
employees know I'm not better than them. The customers know I'm on their level. And that's what I just want. I want to be on everybody's level in that regard. And you know, at some point we'll get big enough that I'll have to scale and I won't be able to be like the active general manager of two brands at the same time. But I've hired a guy that's going to eventually take Audi over. And then as we get these other brands, then I'll sort of, you know, spend some more time at those places to kind of get them going. Right. But it will be required to have like Mike at my BMW store. He's essential for me, you know.
That's amazing.
And I, you know, him and I are kind of the two head people at the campus now. But eventually I'll need a third person, a fourth person, whatever. And we will need that. And that will, once I do that, I'll still be on the campus, you know, kind of like roaming around. I won't be as vital to the day-to-day operations for like I literally build all the cars on the configurator for Porsche. So like every Porsche that comes in, I literally name them. I have like little names, and like we had one that was beige on beige, and I was like, oh, this is for sure like a Gladys loves bingo. This is like a 70-year-old white lady that's gonna come in wearing beige pants, and she's like gonna fall in love with this car. And literally that's what it was. That was like you just dream it up, and it is that. And
how
so
fun, creative for you though.
Yeah, that's my little twist right now. But eventually I won't be able to do that anymore because I'll just,
to your point, building a strong team.
the team is the key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at it from a different lens, kind of in wrapping up, because I feel like we could be here
I'm
for
sorry,
all
yeah.
day. Don't be sorry. This
Yeah.
is so great. So many ways we could go with this. So as an entrepreneur and somebody who has essentially changed industries altogether, like very basically you went from being essentially a professional athlete to an entrepreneur, specifically in the luxury car space, right? For somebody who's considering a career change, what advice do you have for them?
Okay. Before I changed careers officially, I did study my industry a little bit.
Okay.
It's essential to do that.
Okay.
What I did wrong was I never went to go work for anybody else. And what that and the
In
only
that industry.
in the
that
industry,
You're considering.
I never worked for anybody else. I just did it, and as a result of that, I had immediate pressure to succeed, and I had no absorption because it was fire hose and it was sink or swim. And I honestly think that I would have sunk if I didn't have the sleeplessness, insomnia thing, if I wasn't able to pull those types of, because I crammed to learn. I crammed to catch up to speed before everything sank. And when you just start a business as an entrepreneur, it's you have no margin for error. There's a reason why 80% of businesses fail. It's because people don't either have the resources.
Is it up to 80%?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I knew it was
for
over
sure.
half.
No, I've had
Wow.
businesses absolutely fail. Like I had a drone company like 14 years ago. I was designing drones for like the Border Patrol and like DARPA and stuff like that.
Interesting.
I had like a aquatic submarine drone that was for reconnaissance for like spying in like foreign countries and stuff. And I didn't get the contracts. So I threw all this money down a hole, like developing this stuff with a naval scientist. And like literally like our lab like burned and blew up and we lost everything. And like that was it, like a couple $100,000 down the drain.
Wow.
So, that was an L. They're not all W's, you know what I mean? But
Lesson learned, though.
when you have a chance to leverage your skill set and your winning percentage goes, doesn't matter what your winning percentage is. You need to plow all of your assets into the thing that has the chance to pay off the biggest when you have the momentum to pay off big. You have to bide your time and wait and enter at the right point. You can't just rush into it. So I would say, study the industry as a paid intern by going to work for somebody else. Suck up your pride and go work for somebody that's successful. If I wanted to start a restaurant, I would go work for Vache, go work for Fansler, I go work for I would go work for Casey Choi. I'd go work for one of these guys that has a good restaurant that I like. I'd go work at Annex. I'd go get a job.
Yeah.
Like working as a freaking dishwasher.
Yeah.
And I would work my way up the system to a point where even though I'm a, high paid athlete guy, whatever, if you can't wash the dishes, you will not be able to function as a restaurateur. And then you have to do that. So if you did that, you could probably learn in 6 to 9 months what it'll take you 3 or 4 years and potentially failing along the way as the owner of the business. Because then you really learn from the inside. You see what it looks like. If I would have gone and worked for like a Penske car dealership or a Lithia car dealership or like a big private store or something like that, I would have been much better off than owning my own dealerships. I could have never owned anything, gone to work for a dealer as a sales guy, and then worked my way up a little bit as a sales manager, and then taken the money that I had saved up and then bought the right dealership at the right time. Instead, I just bought a bunch of stuff, and like some of the stores sucked and lost a lot of money. Some of them won. That was the worst thing I did. Was I just started plowing money into stuff, thinking, oh, these guys are all incentivized. It'll work out. It doesn't. So that's one. So work for somebody else first. Get paid to do it. Get paid to learn. Figure out what your real skills are. Like, what are you really good at?
Not perceived.
Not perceived.
Like actual.
Yeah, like what are your actual skills?
Yeah.
Like how organized are you? How how competitive are you? How sympathetic are you? How good of a listener are you? And figure out what industry that actually plays well in, and ask your friends to evaluate you honestly and say, like, what would you do if you were me? Like, what would I get into? You might already have an idea what you want to get into, but if it requires investment and money, then you're probably better off waiting and working for somebody else to create a little bit of a safety net before you strike out on your own to start a business that you don't know anything about.
Right.
And, partnerships are horrible most of the time and amazing the rest of the time. So that might be a 20 to 80 ratio. It might be 90-10 in terms of terrible. It just depends on the industry you're in, you know? And those are the two things. So be very careful about your partners and go work for the best of the best and see how the best of the best operate, because like, why would you ever want to do anything else? Like having a bad example and saying, I don't want to be like this, that still leaves so many possibilities open. You might not learn fast enough, and your business might fail.
Well, and I feel like there's a common theme of a lot of what you've been saying, which is be patient. Like, I feel like we're in this world of like fast consumption, needing immediate results. I want to learn how to make an apple pie. Well, I can do it in 5 seconds by looking at this TikTok video type of mentality. And I feel like you're kind of,
but making money making apple pies is a whole different thing.
Fair.
Right?
Fair. Right. Instead of experimenting at home or whatnot. But I think it's kind of hard for some people to see big picture long term sometimes. So I'm gathering that a lot from your life lessons and your experience of like, be patient, wait, look at big picture. Don't look at the now necessarily all the time,
The big picture helps you navigate because it's like a North Star. It keeps you on track as things are challenging and things are difficult, and you stop swerving every time, and you stop smelling the roses when you're halfway there. You develop this heading, this emotional, psychological, spiritual heading. I'm going to get there. That's where I'm going to get. And then you just keep going that direction, and eventually you do get there. Like, if we have to drive to Florida from here, we know we have to head east. If we just keep going east, eventually we'll see a sign. But if we go maybe we go south first, and then we go north, and then we do a little east, and then we do no. You have to go east. That's it. And really, a lot of your destinations are thousands of miles away on a personal goal or personal development basis. Whether you want to be a bodybuilder, or you want to be a home builder, or an elite level agricultural consultant, or a restaurateur, or a PR firm, or whatever, you have to say that this is where I want us to get to, and that's what's going to help us funnel, because you only have so many resources. So you want to funnel those resources into forward progress, and that's how you do it. That's the secret. So like, I sold out to baseball, and I was like, if I get far enough with baseball, I'll get cool cars. I'm not going to be a car salesman when I need to be a baseball player. I'll sell cars later. I'll figure it out. But if you want to be a doctor, you have to go through all that school.
Right.
All that there. And then once you get there, okay, cool. Now you can start your own practice. But until you're board certified, you can't do it. So you have to get through all that stuff first. And if you start counting your chickens before they hatch, it's death.
Doesn't work.
It's absolute death.
Yeah.
You have to operate on building the farm and like just focusing on all the building, because if you start harvesting too early, you're robbing yourself. That's something that is like very prevalent today. And I think they're like, I started a business, I want to get a Ferrari. And it's like, whoa, dude, hang on.
Hold the phone.
Like, is your business going to survive a wobble? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, whoa, back up. You know what I mean?
So you talk to them about that.
I talk to everybody about that.
At some point you got to get a little personal, right? It's like, what is this? What's the deal?
But think about this. Someone comes and buys a car from me. I know what their credit report is.
Fair.
Like, if you come in and you're like, hey, I want to get a loan on this 911 or something like that, like your FICO is going to come through. And I'm like, hey, good job. I'm like, Ray, we should talk about this.
We need to work on this.
Yeah. And so like, you do see that. Like, I know what people make. And in a way, it's a
personal thing
like,
already.
I forget it all, but in the moment, I'm like, okay, I'm assessing the situation.
Right.
Can we even get you qualified for this? Or do you even why do you even need a loan?
True.
Like, what are you doing getting a loan?
What are you doing?
Like, bro, come on.
Yeah.
So,
or leasing versus buying.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Yeah,
and a lot of this stuff you learn along the way, but, if you're willing to be transparent, you can get farther. If you're willing to be communicative and ask the right questions, and you can't feel dumb for asking questions. Like, this is tough. Like, life is hard. Business is brutal. There's someone trying to rip you off every minute.
Yep.
Steal your clients, steal your business, do all this stuff, and it's horrible. So
Yeah.
so for me, I just look at it like, hey, this is just more competition, and instead of a sword and a shield and like, you know, like people chanting like chariots and stuff in the Roman days,
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, well, if I build better cards, I'll get more people to show up,
Yeah.
and I'll sell them more stuff.
And the relationship building too.
And if I'm nicer, that dealership loses and I win.
100%.
Yeah.
Very cool. CJ, you're awesome. Thanks for sharing. I feel like we could still be talking for more. So for people that don't know you, that want to continue learning more about what you're doing in our community, in business, as a dad, as a, you know, inspirational entrepreneur, how can they follow along? Like,
yeah, I mean,
like,
I
on your social media, do you feel comfortable with putting that out there?
yeah, for sure. My Instagram's CJ Wilson Photo.
Okay.
There are imposters. I have no underscores or weird symbols or anything like that, so don't be fooled. People can DM. I get DMs all the time.
Yeah.
People follow me on LinkedIn. I get messages from people.
Cool.
If I know somebody and we have connections on LinkedIn, then I'll generally approve you. But I try not to get spammed by vendors, so I'm like very wary of like certain types of businesses adding me. But if they send me a personal message and like, hey, I liked you on this podcast, I'll be like, okay, cool, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm on X or Twitter as Straight Edge Racer, which is STR8EDGE Racer. Because I'm straight edge, I've had a lifelong commitment to not doing drugs or drinking, so that's kind of a tough thing to uphold.
If you don't mind me asking, what is that? What is straight edge? What does that entail? You said no drinking, no drugs.
Never,
that's amazing.
not once. Never had a beer or anything like that.
Good for you.
I didn't feel like I had any margin for error as an athlete, and I didn't feel like I was going to make it anyways. So I had to like always make forward progress, and I didn't want to stop and smell the roses and have fun. I had some family members on both sides of the family that had problems with drugs and alcohol, and I was like, well, they don't turn out well.
That's very mature of you, like from a young age. Right?
Well, we had like a kid overdose when I was 12 on speed at like 7th grade.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that dude's like gonna die. He's not
traumatizing.
He's not gonna make it to the majors.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I wasn't like bigger and better than everybody else. I was like little and like figuring it out, so I had to like really take progress. Yeah. So I just think, it's difficult to raise kids today with all the temptation that's out there. Our kids are still pretty young, so God knows what's going to happen in like 5 more years when they're like getting into middle school and high school.
Yeah.
But I think like people make their own choices. I am not a person of moderation, as you can tell. I'm pretty extreme. I kind of go for it. Yeah. And I think like if I did drink, I'd probably try to be really good at it, which would be a problem.
I don't mean to laugh.
No, but it's true. It's listen, but it's like look in the mirror.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I used to
conscious of that.
Yeah, I used to sit down and play video games for like 16 hours straight.
Yeah.
I have an addictive personality.
You have an addictive personality, yeah.
I know that.
Extreme, yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to turn out like these people on the street. So I can be addicted to learning.
You're right.
And that's way more productive.
Like the best.
Yeah, and it's like weird. But I really enjoy learning. I enjoy pushing myself, and
And I see you guys have done that with your kids, with your girls. Like they're I feel like obviously very smart, very mature for their ages, and academic.
Yeah, Liz has got him in Kumon and got him in all this stuff and supplementing it. I went to Montessori as a kid, so I was like motivated to be a self-starter and learn. But like I said, I was an introvert, so the world of books is like a whole imaginary thing for me. And I think there's so much to be learned by the people that have already succeeded, and people now, not guru classes. I'm specifically ruling out guru classes. Okay.
What do you mean guru classes?
These like scammers like Manny Koshpin and stuff that are like, like I'll teach you the secrets of business. It's like you take other people's money and you cut it into smaller pieces, and then you give a big slice to yourself and you Instagram it, and then people think you're richer than you are.
I literally just watched a documentary about this, Age of Influence. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oof.
But there's a lot of scammers out there. But the real successful people, they write books, and the books are either free or very cheap, or they give advice away for free. Right. Scammers charge you for advice that you can get for free from experts.
Truth.
This is like a very important thing to understand. And if you can take like Harvard and MIT classes online, and they're not that expensive, you don't need to go take some like influencer marketing BS from one of these like
workshops,
SoCal guys that's like charging $10,000 to have like an inner circle meetup. Like I hate that culture. I really despise that, because they're not being productive people. They're just scamming for people.
They're just wanting money. Yeah.
And I'll say this: if like there's one particular guy Grant Cardone. He's 100% a scammer, and his whole thing is gonna blow up at some point, and it's bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know.
Fortune telling here.
Yeah, so I see this coming from a mile away because I've seen it happen before, and I know where these people started because you can research it and see. So if you do your own research on who you're reading, there's very few of these guys are as successful as you think they are for doing the thing that they're telling you to do.
Well, isn't there that term of like the ones that are super flashy and out there are the ones that have the least amount of money?
Yeah.
You know what I
like
mean?
Robert Kiyosaki is a real investor. Like he's
Yeah.
actually successful, and he does real estate investing, and he's a little bit cringy on some of his takes on things, but like the guy did it, and he did what he said he was going to do. And then he wrote a book and was more successful than he thought he was going to be, and as an author, so he kept writing books. But there's like a earnestness in that, and he said, these are the lessons I learned from my rich father, these are the lessons I learned from my real father. You know, like my buddy's dad was rich and did all these things right, and my dad was fearful and did all these things wrong. And so I like wanted to be like this guy, so I did that. And he like his book is like cheap. It's like $6. You can get a copy of his book for $6 or whatever.
What's the name of this book?
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, and that's like a super influential book. Warren Buffett is crusty, and he's 90 years old, and he says there are a lot of really like terrible things about Bitcoin, but he's very prominent about long-term investing. He has a lot of lessons to learn in that regard. But the people that are saying, hey, do this today, you'll be rich tomorrow, that is always a scam. It's impossible to do that. You cannot sustain an infinite growth curve. And you see that with companies like Apple and Microsoft, where they have these huge fluctuations where they're run by a wizard. The wizard leaves, they crash, and the wizard has to come back and fix it. And then like the new guy comes in after that guy dies, like Steve Jobs.
Right.
And like now it's like they're doing all these other random things. It's like, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. But I trust Apple with my money more than I trust Wells Fargo with my money. I'd rather own Apple stock than money in the bank with Wells Fargo, because it's like, at least I know that they're incentivized, whereas like some of these banks, they just rip you off. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned out there, and you could be successful just doing one or two of these things. You don't have to do all 10.
Yeah.
And if you learn everything there is to know about certain industries or whatever, then you can be really good and operate in a niche and like go really far with.
How do you feel about the term jack of all trades?
I think if you're dedicated, you can learn anything, but I don't think you can do everything. I think you can learn. That's an important distinction. I can learn anything, but I can't do it all, especially not at the same time. And I can have everything I want, just not all at the same time, because you do have to make sacrifices.
True.
So if I want to really be a race car driver and a wealthy business person and a good dad, which one of those is the most important? At the end of the day, being a good dad and being a business person are more important than racing. And racing I can do later. So I can
good point.
wait.
So maybe with the mindset of maybe not now.
Yeah.
You know,
you have
later.
to get to the next level. There's always a plateau. And once you get to that plateau, you have the team, you're good. And, you know, I
feel like that's relatable as a working parent too, because I think a lot of the times we're trying to like juggle it all, right? Like, how am I going to drop off and make the meeting and somehow get dinner on the table at a decent time? But, you know, there's different seasons of parenting. There's different seasons of our careers and our lives that kind of, to your point, you can't do it all maybe at the same time.
But you can do it all on Sunday, and then you then maybe on Monday you take some of that responsibility off your plate.
Yeah.
And there's no 50-50 with parenting either. It's not or marriage. Like you do have to split. Some days you're going to put in 90%, some days you're going to take 90%. And you know, that's realistic. And people, I think, you know, my wife and I got in a really big fight about this when we first married, and my idea of going to the grocery store was, give me half the list. I'm going to supermarket sweep, just sprint through.
Supermarket sweep.
We'll get 2 carts. Yeah. You take your half.
Wow, so you're
I'll take my half.
teaming it. Okay.
That was my idea.
Impressive.
We can get it all done in 30 minutes if we do that. Then we can have 30 minutes to ourselves to quality
You're
time.
Like trying to make the most time or efficient with your time.
She's like, no, let's hold hands. Let's walk through. Let's take our time. Let's take an hour in the store and go through together. And I was like, so huge blow up on that when we first started dating, because I view everything in terms of that efficiency percentage. Like, we have this much to get done. If we do it in this much time, we have time to do a completely different thing.
100%.
That's how you get everything done in my mind. And so she's started to kind of leverage that a little bit more. You know, if you have a set amount of, like, I buy a half cow now. I order a half cow for beef consumption. And I have that. I order that, it's whatever, and then I have beef, and I don't have to shop for beef for 6 months.
That's nice.
So I make one call. I pay, gets delivered.
Amazing.
I separate it out in the freezer, and then that's it. And that might save me 10 hours over the course of 6 months,
I believe
maybe
it.
20 hours.
Yeah.
So now I have 20 hours. Can I learn a piano song? Can I read more books to the kids? Can I do more push-ups? Is there something I can make a value in that niche time? And you know, can I do something selfish in that pursuit or learning or whatever?
Right.
That is totally the secret, but you have to have resources to do that. And you have to have perspective. But what happens is if you develop the perspective first, when you do get the resources, then you're hyper efficient with how you deploy them.
It's true.
I didn't have a lot of money when I was younger. So when I got money, I already had plans. So I was able to like boop, boop, boop. And I had time to work out the plans, like probably 10 years between making the plans and implementing the plans. So I was able to refine it by watching other people succeed and fail along the same lines in the same categories. And there's so many people out there doing what you want to do already. Are you going to learn from them, or are you going to learn from your own mistakes? And it's way cheaper.
I think with that, though, and I was just having a conversation with a friend about it, it's like, sure, yeah, there's plenty of other people probably doing the same thing, similar things, but it's not you.
Right.
And you're going to put your own spin on it. You're going to have your own relationships with people. You're going to bring your value to whatever situation that may be, whatever industry. So I feel like people that are super, like, you know, petty and competitive and whatnot, it's like there's enough business to go around here.
There's a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of butts to put in seats, as we say in the car business.
Yeah.
But you know, it is competition, though. You do have to be better because people are going to spend their money with you or somebody else.
Yeah, you do have to be better.
That's
but
the hard
what makes
part.
you better?
Yeah, that gets back to
And
the
that
look
goes
in the mirror,
back
be
to-
honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can learn stuff.
Yeah.
If you're not good at something and you know that's like holding you back, you figure it out or hire into that strength. You might not be able to turn this person that's working for you doing this role into like this better version of themselves or this all-star version that does all the things, but you might be able to hire somebody that the two of them together become like a mini team within the team. And then you can count on both of them to get the whole thing done, you know, and then they are both succeeding. You've put them in a position to succeed and they're playing off each other in a positive way instead of competing each other. Like whoever doesn't do this gets fired. Okay, that sucks. So, you know, and if you, let's say salary wise, you have to pay each of those people $75,000. It might cost $200,000 to get the one person that can do everything. So you might be better off with the two people for 75, or maybe even two people for 85 or 90, because then they can field more questions, communicate more because there's two of them to go around. There's more overlap. You having one person for 24 hours a day, they get burned out.
Right.
And then they're also a single point of failure.
One person.
If they leave, you are effed.
Exactly.
And so there's
And I feel like two heads are always better than one.
Sometimes.
You disagree?
Well, if you have to break the roles down. One person steers.
Know your strengths.
One set of wheels turns the car, the other set of the wheels drives the car. Then you have a nav system, you have brakes. You know, you need people slowing you down financially to make sure that you're thinking where you want to go. You have to have people telling you what other people have done, where the route is. You have to have the vision to look out the windshield and see around you to make sure no one's going to ram into you, right? And you have to have the engine driving you, the passion, the determination.
All your little puns that you got
So all these metaphors. So
metaphors, yes.
Yeah. So I'm like I try to make every topic relatable, and that comes from like sitting there and pondering it over and over and over again to get to that. You want to get to the crystal, the seed, the deepest kernel of truth. And then if you get to that point, then you can kind of like, you can evaluate it in a cleaner way, and then you can relay it to people a little bit better. So I think that's my special skill, is that I can talk about a complex subject and get down to the deepest, smallest part of it. And then I can say, okay, what do you understand? What level are you at? And then doesn't matter what it is, I can try to figure out a way to get you to see it from that perspective, through the lens that you already have.
Totally.
So, you know, I can give it to you through the mom lens and say, okay, well, as a mom, you want this, this, and that. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, I understand
like
that.
more relatable for people. And not to add another hat to your collection, but I mean, I could totally see you teaching in some capacity.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about that?
Well, I've done mentorship.
Or you've done like
probably
Bitcoin education items.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And I think I like the mentorship thing. Structured teaching, like at a university or something like that, is not my bag, because there'd be somebody that would say something in the admin side of things that would tell me
That would be like, CJ, you're crossing the line. Or
yeah, and I would be like, listen, I'm going to be 100% honest with no agenda about this, and I'm going to tell people the truth. Like, I'm not going to tell them what you want them to hear. I'm going to tell them the truth. And if you know, and part of that ability, I don't know, willingness to call out scammers and like a willingness to stand your ground, that comes from like having a childhood with adversity and you know, being bullied as a kid and stuff like that. It allowed me to, like, when I recognize that again and I see something going wrong, I'm willing to call it out, and I don't care what happens to me at the end of the day. So I think eventually, you know, it leads to me doing some sort of public service, whether that's education or some sort of municipal thing. I'm not sure yet. I do know that I believe that successful people owe it to society to give back. And I don't think that's a financial thing. I think it's a wisdom thing. So if you've learned a lot of tough lessons, then you can benefit society from getting other people to understand those lessons earlier in life. And then you can create like a sort of a curve, an adoption curve of performance or intellect or safety or whatever it is. Because if you know something's unsafe, it's like, hey guys, rattlesnakes, super dangerous. Like, my buddy died, he got bit by a rattlesnake, like, don't go near him, you know, like, that helps society evolve. And in the same sense, there's all these other developmental things, whether it's parenting or business wise or whatever, that we literally would be better off than the people that are running things. And because we know certain things don't work. You know, like, you just know it doesn't work. And so when they keep trying these things, you're like, this is a scam. And if you don't call that scam out, then we're basically all going to end up speaking, you know, we're all going to end up eating the bugs. And I'm unwilling to do that. So we can do better. We can do better. But that's where it's headed if we don't step up. If people like me and people that are even better than me at all these other things that I do already, if those people don't step up and they just kind of big league it and they're like, I'm above it, it doesn't matter. If you don't look out for the little people and like, if I don't want anybody to eat the bugs. Not just me.
Well, the betterment of everyone. Yeah.
Like, we should be designing like spaceships that go to, you know, interstellar space. We shouldn't be focusing on like, we shouldn't be worried about where the power comes from. You know what I mean? Like, that's
some
the problem.
People do, though, to your point.
Yeah, but it's all math.
Yeah.
It's all math.
Yeah.
We need power to have quality life. You don't have air conditioning if you don't have power. You electric cars without power, like, what are you doing? You get a bicycle. You know what I mean? So, you know, we're going to revert back to sailboats and bicycles for transportation and horses if we can't figure out the power grid, because that's, as the population grows, you know, and we have all these extra taxpayers being born. You know, you created 3 new taxpayers. I created 4. So, we need to do better as a society, and that comes from intelligence. It comes from logic. It comes from talking it out and hashing it out and working across the table or across the aisle. And that's why I'm here to announce my presidency run. No, I'm just kidding. So,
man, CJ,
that's the future.
Epic.
You know, that's because it's like, it can't. I mean, people say it can't get worse than Gavin Newsom running things. I'm like, it can. If he keeps running things, it will keep getting worse, because it's been getting worse. So we need to do something to have a better candidate than him, and that starts on a local level. We have to be willing to stand up.
Seems like you're very passionate about that and compelled to do your part. So that's exciting.
One day, yeah. And you meet some of these people and you realize they're just regular people too. And there's people that they go in that direction because they want to make society better, and other people start that because they're like, oh, I heard Nancy Pelosi's rich. Maybe I could get rich doing this. And it's like, well, maybe get rich first and learn some business lessons and get slapped around by life a little bit, and then prevent people from making mistakes. And that's a better way to do it, I think. That's my angle. But I'll wrap it up because you've been trying to, so we can stop there. But I appreciate the time, Ray. You're great at this.
Thanks.
You're a natural.
It's been fun.
Yeah. No.
Like we were kind of talking about before, I'm trying not to overthink it and have fun. So I appreciate you taking the time to doing it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Feel free to rate and review this episode here, and connect with us on Instagram if you have any thoughts, questions, or any guest suggestions. Thanks.